My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system, which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. It is May 6, 2025, and this is documentation regarding the pattern of conduct that I remain subject to as I am at third-party facilitating venue Woodside Senior Apartments, which is in the facilitating venue of the city of Ontario, where throughout the entire city, which is within a state, which is within the United States, the entity has engaged in a very heavily and thoroughly documented pattern of conduct of maintaining the supernatural environment, as referred to as the specific environment. And that includes at this apartment complex, at specifically the defendant Tracy Banks's door. I've documented the sun both rising and setting, not only on the same day, the sunrise into the sunset at one apartment, not moving, not going anywhere, but also as you're documenting the sunrise on any day, you will never document in a natural environment the sunset at that same apartment, at that same address, at that same location. That is a pattern of conduct of what is stalking, understood as stalking with light. Stalking means to follow, to pursue, to remain is to surveil. This is what the entity that is gang stalking is doing with light. This is what the entity that is gang stalking is doing with noise. This is what an entity that is gang stalking is doing with their presence. And in the United States, in the state of California, amongst a corrupt government, stalking and surveillance is underway in concert with a population that is masquerading as a normal everyday life, everyday society, where the system of federal group stalking, monitoring, gang stalking is embedded into society. It's a part of what the government is regularly engaging in, surveillance, in other words. The entity is engaging in what is gang stalking, where this system of surveillance that you are recognizing in your environment, because where I'm documenting, which is relevant to what anyone else can observe and compare with. And how is that? Because the sunrise that's over me at Tracy Banks's apartment in Ontario at Woodside Senior Apartments. Remember, it's not anywhere in Ontario. It's at Woodside Senior Apartments in Ontario. But my documentation exceeds being at Woodside Senior Apartments because the entity has engaged in the sunrise over me, for example, at Mercy House at 435 South Bonneview in Ontario, which is not going to be seen at Tracy Banks's apartment front door, Unit 51. The sunrise at the Ontario Museum of History and Arts at Holt and Euclid Avenue, which again is not going to be in perfect alignment with Tracy Banks's apartment door, such that the light source is in alignment with me as I walk outside of her front door, and engineer light is covering her patio, and my shadow appears in what is supposed to be sunlight. All of this documentation of the environment, which is speaking to a documented pattern of conduct of stalking with light. Stalking with light, stalking with noise, stalking with presence is a malicious pattern of conduct that the demon-possessed practice. And this is exposing a demonic system of surveillance that's underway in the United States. Because the fake sun, not the natural environment, so it is accurately referred to in this exact way that I have termed it, the fake sun that is documented remaining over me wherever I am at sunrise, is remaining at the same location until the end of the day. And where you are, for example, in Miami, Florida, there will not be a mutual sunrise. In fact, the sun that is rising over you 3 hours ahead of what is the sunrise here at Woodside Senior Apartments is not the same sun. but the natural environment requires that there is one sun. So the 3 hour difference and the exclusivity of the sun itself is speaking to what is impossible, as I have documented that impossibility, because when you speak of such things that are unheard of and that are also directly conflicting with what we've all been conditioned to think and understand and accept, you have to support it with hard evidence, tangible evidence that no demon, even no government, can argue with. The entity that is engaged in gang stalking is doing so in the specific environment. The specific environment is revealing to everyone in the United States that we're all under surveillance. We don't have the privacy that we're supposed to have, that we think we have, that we're conditioned to believe that we have, that the Constitution ensures that we have. And this is government conduct that we are under surveillance. It's not just a bunch of random weirdos in the United States that are part of just a satanic cult that want to just watch everyone and monitor them. It is demonic, and cults are very much engaged in monitoring behaviors. It's demonic with regard to what the government is also adapting. It's a spirit, in other words, which is inspiring what is monitoring. Monitoring is demonic. Monitoring is also what is exposing surveillance as the government practices it. And the government practices it in reliance on a population. And why is that? Because the police departments do not maintain their police stations in every apartment complex, at every corner, in every housing subdivision, at every liquor store, at every grocery store, at every end of the freeway. The police are not everywhere at all times. However, with regard to surveillance, a satanic system of surveillance that is facilitated through what is demonic activity, demonic behaviors that are designed to monitor, you're dealing with what is a common condition, which is demon possession, and what is a demonic environment. And in this demonic environment, you will understand what is a fake sun that's over you in Miami, Florida at 7:20 in the morning over you, and then what will be 7:20 a.m. with regard to the sunrise here in California at Ontario, Woodside Senior Apartments. And it would then be 10:20 a.m. going on Miami, Florida's time, just using as an example. But at 3 hours from the sunrise, I'm documenting what is the maintenance of the fake sun over the same apartment, over the same sidewalk, where a bunch of people are living their lives, outwardly demonstrating what is supposed to appear as disinterest, disconnection, nonchalant, demeanors, and ongoing ordinary conduct that is on its surface supposed to appear as lawful, even private, something that is within their constitutional rights to engage in, as far as not breaking the law and the ways in which the same entity has created laws where you can be subject to what is a prosecution for a crime. This is the malice of the entity that is gang stalking, and it is indeed embedded into society. And the sun that is remaining from sunrise at Woodside Senior Apartments until 3 hours later at 10:20 a.m. at the same Woodside Senior Apartments, specifically over me, Unit 51 at Woodside Senior Apartments, is no sun that ever engaged in what is a sunrise in Miami, Florida 3 hours earlier. And to be 3 hours ahead in Miami, Florida, with regard to what is the natural environment, when you're juxtaposing that, what the natural environment requires. All right, so the sunrise that is happening at Woodside Senior Apartments is the same maintenance of a fake sun 3 hours later, and until sunset. And that is proven with evidence, and that documentation has been consistently maintained as I remain subject to a specific environment that is specifically supernatural, and it is specific to a pattern of conduct. The recognition of the pattern of conduct, where the pattern of conduct not only includes the behavior of following from place to place, which is what the demon possessed are doing as an entity. The demon possessed are following with methods such as with light, and they are following with methods such as with noise. And that demented pattern of conduct is entirely demonic. That's why it's so unheard of. That's why it is the system that the same corrupt entity that is maintaining a surveillance system resorts to things such as gang stalking in order to criminally defame the one who is indeed being gang stalked. Gang stalking is a system that is pursuant to the surveillance that is underway in the United States in the specific environment where there's no sun that's going to be in Florida and at Woodside Senior Apartments at the same time at any point in the day. And pursuant to what is surveillance that you are now aware of because of the unnatural environment that surrounds all of us. This is relevant to recognizing the pattern of conduct of federal group stalking and monitoring, where surveillance is already occurring and the entity is engaging in what is a criminal system of targeting an American citizen in furtherance of criminally defaming them, murdering them, kidnapping them. And that's the system that I remain subject to. And it is recognized at the outset with regard to the documentation of the specific environment. And you can strip away the fake sun, because I've also shown you that the fake sun is nothing other than a poorly designed stage where what is embedded into society, demonic spirits monitoring, spirits that use people who are demon possessed, people who are monitoring each other. And this is government conduct because the government is monitoring. That is, the government is maintaining surveillance. All right, so the entity that's engaging in the surveillance system is engaged in gang stalking, where American citizens are subject to being targeted, and it is inhumane and unconstitutional as the surveillance that's underway. Surveillance is underway in your everyday life. Surveillance is underway on the venue of the internet. Surveillance is underway in private spaces such as bathrooms. And that's what I'm subject to at Woodside Senior Apartments. This surveillance system that is occurring inside of the bathroom is that which is occurring while I'm remaining, living, being, existing inside of the apartment building. And so I want to document what is a documented instance of the entity stalking with amplified noise in the kitchen, and it's a matter of documentation uploaded to the Google Drive. It's the significance of me pointing up to the ceiling because that's the location where I am subject to what is amplified booming that's heard in the kitchen. The noise is situated where I am physically situated. That's relevant to what is understanding stalking with noise. Stalking with noise is also executed with regard to noise that occurs with simultaneity to whatever it is that you do. This is how demon-possessed people who are stalking in that environment, because you're not engaged in any private activity, you're not there on any personal basis, even where you pay your rent, even where you are residing, even where your business is operating. You are not present as an individual. You're not present as any constitutional private protected act. You are there on behalf of the government that's engaging in unconstitutional surveillance in what is a recognized specific environment. And your behavior is also, not coincidentally, but pursuant to a pattern of conduct, acting in conformity to that which is designed to monitor another person. Stalking with noise is not only happening with regard to the noise occurring where I'm situated in the apartment, but it's also stalking with noise when it is occurring with simultaneity to whatever it is that I'm doing. What I happen to be doing is not only living and being the person of interest by the demon-possessed entity that is gang stalking me, I am also documenting it. So as I document, the entity engages in stalking with activity. That's also relevant. It's legally relevant when you're prosecuting any stalker, the ways in which that stalker is threatening you. While you enforce your rights to not be subject to any person stalking you, let alone the government, in a demonic and terrorizing manner, such as in concert with the people of the state, the entity is the stalker that is threatening while you're enforcing your rights against that entity and documenting them. Okay, and this is what's underway, 11:34 p.m. The demons are stalking with amplified noise. Every crack in the ceiling is the demonic pattern of conduct. While stalkers are listening, monitoring on communication devices on the internet, a stalker that knows that you're documenting them stalking you, that's a very serious threat by that stalker, and it's state conduct. Okay, now this stalker is the one that's monitoring and stalking and surveilling in the bathroom. Okay, not only in the kitchen at 7:56 in the morning when the entity is stalking with amplified noise, where the old people at Woodside are gang stalking under a fake sun and an engineered light. That's why at 7:56 the apartment building filled with all the mental health patients who are going to be prosecuted in units 48 through 64, not asleep at 11:35 at night, not asleep at 7:56 in the morning, very early and very late. Stalking with amplified noise, pursuant to where I'm located in the apartment building, in conformity to the pattern of conduct of also occurring with simultaneity to what I do while I document the demons who are stalking, while I for instance, reference the enemy by name, such as license 5WB715, who was demon possessed, who was stalking pursuant to the diagram that you can see. You can see this white woman who puts peroxide in her hair, who's over 55 years old, a very masculine frame. However, she is not naturally causing the ceiling to crack and the walls to crack. It's the amplified method of noise creation, stalking with audible activity, in other words, where I'm located in the apartment while I just so happen to be engaged in operation of my communication device, which is under surveillance, and documentation about the stalker. That's the stalker also threatening while you are documenting that stalker. And it's also attributed to the government. It's all government action. None of this is at a private residence. The demon that's gang stalking with license 5WB715 is stalking with the city of Ontario, Paul Leon, the Ontario Police Department, the city of Ontario, the people of the state in the city of Ontario who represent the government, because they're all stalking in that environment, which is designed to monitor another person. That's criminal surveillance by the government that's acting in concert with a population who share a condition, and that's mental illness. And the condition, what you can know about their mental illness with regard to this psychopathic and antisocial behavior of monitoring another person whom they don't even know, and also things such as monitoring your sister, which is the condition of the sex offender Eric Corey Spencer, monitoring your daughter, which is the condition of the demon-possessed person, the sex offender Tracy Lemire Banks, who also goes by Tracy Lemire Jenkins on Facebook, where she has her 26 and a half friends who also don't like her because she doesn't like herself nor her life. That's why she's gang stalking her own daughter as a demon-possessed person, with her elderly neighbors who are up at 11:40 at night stalking her daughter with her. They do the same thing when my vagina is exposed in the morning in the bathroom, and the demons are engaged in a frenzied manner of what is pacing while they know, oh, she's naked, oh, she's relieving herself, oh, she's on the toilet, oh, her legs are spread apart. Let's pace around and monitor that. That's what the sex offender is doing, including Eric Spencer, who doesn't have to be at Woodside, including Tracy Banks, who doesn't have to be in the apartment. You notice when Tracy Banks leaves the apartment, where does the fake sun go? It doesn't stay over Tracy Banks, not in the natural environment. It stays over me, where the Ontario police are gang stalking me in her apartment, where the people of the state are gang stalking me like they are at 11:38 p.m. in her apartment. And this is the same circumstance that I'm subject to in Los Angeles, where the LAPD were gang stalking me in my apartment, where I also worked at that venue and the LAPD were gang stalking me, and you have clear evidence of that because that's where the fake sun was over the top of my head, where the LAPD were gang stalking me in my apartment and in my office at that workplace where I also worked in Los Angeles at Alvarado Gardens. This is what the sex offender that's providing an ongoing admission to federal stalking in violation of Title 18, Section 22618, subsections 1 and 2, to violation of stalking in violation of the Violence Against Women Act, 34 U.S.C. 12291, at this HUD-regulated property, where the property management company, AVANATH Capital Management, is gang stalking with its co-defendant that's providing such an admission by that entity that also engages in monitoring my vagina, my genitalia, while all of the entity is engaging in the surveillance system in the bathroom inside of this apartment, at this apartment complex, which is a facilitating venue where the government is engaging in an inhumane and unconstitutional surveillance system with a whole population that includes the sex offender pacing in Unit 55, while I'm documenting her, the stalker, because she represents the entity. I'm documenting the entity begins pacing. Because remember, you're not cracking the ceiling while you're walking around. So the entity is going to the extent to stalk with amplified noise while I'm documenting. That's the intent, to harass and terrorize. You're going out of your way. Because walking around in her apartment is not going to be heard by me inside of Tracy Banks' apartment. That's the entity that's providing an admission to doing exactly what it is that I'm documenting. This is what was happening at 7:56 in the morning, where these old people who are subject to prison and mental asylums, gang stalking with the corrupt government that's obsessed with me because of its demon-possessed condition. And it is the inspiration for the criminal conduct. It's criminal in the United States because we have a constitution. The Constitution outlaws what is surveillance that's underway outside of any probable cause or warrant. And to be an exceptional human being, to have spiritual gifts, is not providing warrant or probable cause to keep an American citizen like myself under surveillance. Nor did I consent to it. And the government also knows that because I'm documenting, and the government is keeping that documentation under surveillance as well. The government is being documented with this sex offender, a very unintelligent, probably a high school graduate, if that, who's unemployed at her very advanced age, gang stalking in reliance on a government program to pay her rent in Unit 55, license 5WB 715. And she's directly pointing to all the other gang stalkers at 7:56 in the morning who were stalking with amplified noise that was situated in the kitchen where I was standing, where I pointed my finger upward toward the ceiling where the noise was surrounding, in the same way that it is at 11 at night. While I'm documenting it, that's monitoring my communication devices, that's monitoring me, that's monitoring while I'm documenting the stalker, that's the stalker intending to harm by threats, that's an implied threat that you're going to keep stalking while I'm taking pictures of you, while I'm documenting you stalking me. That's the threat by the government that also acts with police departments. That's a threat by the government with whom the gang stalker in Unit 55 is monitoring me with. It's a threat with the intent to obstruct justice while you are monitoring the documentation and you in real time engage in that very terrorizing method of stalking someone with noise, where I'm physically positioned and while I am documenting the stalker in real time. This is that apartment complex where the sun rises and sets. And Miami, Florida has the pattern of conduct underway because there's no natural environment where the sun could ever be over anywhere in the state of Florida, let alone Miami, Florida, where I'm documenting a sun that is rising and setting over this old sex offender that's in Unit 55 stalking me at 11 o'clock at night, while she is obsessed with everything that I say and do, including my vagina, when it is in the bathroom, exposed, and I'm engaged in what is private activity, which that sex offender shouldn't be interested in, but she's a sex offender and a demon-possessed one who's engaged in criminal monitoring with the city of Ontario, the state of California, the U.S. government. All right, this is what an entity is doing with impunity, and it's exactly what's documented in detail in Los Angeles, what Karen Bass, a sex offender, a gang stalker, a domestic terrorist, acting with Dominic Choi, the LAPD, who are engaging very heavily documented gang stalking, hundreds of times in stalking in helicopter, as I documented, just like what the Ontario police is doing in Ontario, California, where the fake sun rises and sets in alignment to the sidewalk outside of Tracy Banks's apartment. Which is speaking to the supernatural environment where the demon-possessed who are over 55 are stalking and admittedly stalking in violation of the Violence Against Women Act, in violation of the federal stalking statute, in violation of what is the Constitution, where the government is engaging in surveillance and having no warrant or probable cause. All right. So it's an unlawful search of my communication devices. It's a violation of my privacy while I'm inside of an apartment home. And it is that which is also equally a violation because the people of the state committed. That's why the government surrounds in that environment and does so while you are under the impression that the police are separate or not a part of it because you don't see the police there. The police are in relevant position. The police are maintaining surveillance with the people of the state who share that condition. Okay, the ceiling continuously cracking. This is audible activity at 11:43 p.m. So I want to make sure this is what's documented on the Google Drive at 7:56 a.m. The defendants, LYNDA, REYES, and every other employee of AVANATH Capital Management are subject to prosecution for it. The entity is engaging in what is purely criminal conduct with impunity, and this impunity is relevant to the mental illness that's clearly recognized and understood when you are pulling any other type of stalker in a courtroom and prosecuting them and inquiring, why are you stalking this woman? Why are you hiding behind her bushes? Why are you following her everywhere that she's going? This is what an entity is doing and exhibiting while they're gang stalking. Why are you stalking by residents as a whole apartment complex, which is, again, something that is already proven, and it's something that you necessarily have to prove because the demon-possessed engage in this criminal system in the first place in an effort to maliciously defame another person, and it's criminal defamation in conformity to that pattern of conduct. Okay, so the sex offender in Unit 55 that's not in a bedroom, asleep, minding her business, she's in the living room in her 600 square foot apartment, not going anywhere, pacing in the living room right above me where this demon is stalking, while inside Tracy Banks' apartment is filled with blue tinted engineered light. All right, so the amplified audible activity of a ceiling cracking is nothing other than audible activity which is impossible to create by the masculine female that's inside of Unit 55, no matter how masculine, no matter how thick her neck is. She is not engaging in what is anything that's going to cause the ceiling and the walls to crack. She's stalking in the path, however, by residents while this demonic means of audible noise is created, and it is as supernatural as what you've also seen inside of Tracy Banks' apartment, such as light sitting on her ceiling, light moving across her ceiling, light creating what is light manifesting out of nowhere, I guess under the guise of from the sun that's outside, ricocheting off of something in her window where it's covered with closed blind slats and window coverings. And that's supposed to be explanation for what is light that is on her ceiling. And I could put my hand up in the middle of the air and you will see my hand appearing on that light manifested on the ceiling, magnified in size. You will see that light documented moment by moment, moving gradually from the ceiling to the wall, to the ceiling in the kitchen. You will see light that magnifies through the peephole onto the kitchen wall. This is where it's as supernatural as that. It has nothing to do with the sun, and it's not sunlight. The amplified audible activity has nothing to do with the very masculine built demon that is in Unit 55. She is stalking by residents and is doing so with knowledge in that supernatural environment, which is for her gang stalking purposes. This is an exposed and uncloseted mental illness by a demon-possessed and a violent sex offender that is gang stalking. And this is shared by her co-defendant, Tracy Banks, who is targeting her own daughter, and her daughter is prosecuting her. All right, for trying to murder me and get away with it, for sexually violating me since I was a child, and now I'm prosecuting her for sexually violating me as a gang stalker with a whole government. She's doing this with her sex partner as well, Jason Isaac Fields, and that is who is also engaged in this satanic targeting system. While he's engaged in gang stalking with the demons in relevant position, he's engaged in gang stalking with the government that is maintaining this method of surveilling me. Engaging in what is bathroom monitoring, and which is also documented. It's ongoing. Let me go ahead and give you the documentation regarding that. Again, the sex offender in unit number 55. She is gang stalking with all of the demon-possessed couple in Unit 52. They're being prosecuted with the entity that stalked with amplified noise. The demon in Unit number 55 is acting as an entity, and the demons in Unit 52, the demon in Unit 56, the demons in Units 57 through 64, who are also not capable of creating any walls cracking when they're walking on the floor inside of their units. And they are on the opposite side of the same building. The demons in units 57 through 64, and the demons in units 48 through what would be 56, none of them individually nor collectively causing the walls or the ceiling to crack. These are the demons that are together being prosecuted for late night gang stalking while they are being documented as the stalkers that they are, stalking by residents with the government in furtherance of murder and kidnapping and psychological torture, which is supposed to result in what is murder and kidnapping for criminal defamation. Okay, upon criminal defamation, the entity that wants to gang stalk you and then falsely depict your character for being somebody that is mentally ill. That's why the sex offender in Unit 55 is stalking with amplified noise, but they all are. So you're going to be mindful of the demon that's on the walker in Unit 52, because she's going to federal prison. And so is her gang stalking co-occupant, the male that walks around with the beanie and the jacket and the glasses on. This demon is going to federal prison as well. So is the demon in Unit 56 with the two dogs. She's going to federal prison. So are the mental health patients in Unit 41. They're going to mental asylums, however. They've gone to the extent of proving severe mental instability, which is already in question when you're gang stalking in the first place. They've gone to such the extent to where mental asylums, as opposed to federal prison and mental examinations, is what is prescribed with regard to their inevitable and required confinement upon being prosecuted for gang stalking in concert with their co-defendant, who was stalking with amplified noise, because the resident in Unit 55, who is a third party at a third party facilitating venue targeting with the government, is not causing the ceiling and the walls to crack. It's the intentional engagement of what is stalking with noise, with the intent also, while I'm documenting, to obstruct justice. That's relevant to the impunity that the entity that is gang stalking shares. And it's also relevant to the damages from AVANATH and federal imprisonment of AVANATH's employees. That includes LYNDA Reyes, who was stalking and monitoring at 11 o'clock at night with her co-defendants in units 33 through 64, who are subject to prison. All of them in all 144 units are proven as gang stalkers. That's why the fake sun is remaining over me at the apartment complex. And that's why the government is documenting gang stalking me at the apartment complex where the fake sun rises and sets, where surveillance is underway in that environment in concert with that government that uses the very population that lives at that apartment complex to maintain harassment, psychological torture, and what is monitoring on communication devices as well. That's relevant to what is ongoing at 11:51 p.m. So I want to remind you about what is bathroom monitoring. The entity is maintaining audible noise in the bathroom while they are anxiously awaiting me pulling my panties down and engaging in what is private activity. And this is the explicit and sexually perverted and predatory behavior of the gang stalking government. The criminal surveillance system is an exceedingly violent in a sexual manner. It is sexually motivated. While the entity is engaging in what is federal group stalking and monitoring, as I've exposed it, the entity is monitoring my genitalia, monitoring my exposed vagina, that is, because I'm going to put it in explicit terms because this is the explicit and perverted behavior that the sex offender in Unit 55 engaged in at 10:15 p.m. and that Tracy Banks, an incestuous sex offender, is engaging in at 10:15 p.m. with the City of Ontario that's maintaining surveillance proven by the specific environment at 10:15 p.m. that AVANATH Capital Management is engaging in this apartment established as the specific environment and the apartment complex established as the specific environment, which is a facilitating venue at 10:15 p.m. where the entity is engaging in bathroom monitoring. Now, the entity is engaging in this P.O.C., and it's just providence that the entity engages in amplified noise. And you're mindful of all the co-defendants who, again, the entity that doesn't engage in any logic, doesn't engage in any reasoning. You're dealing with a demonic spirit. Satan doesn't have any self-control. So Satan will use whoever and use whatever to maintain criminal conduct. But you're understanding what is demonic. This is Satan's nature, monitoring us, monitoring people, monitoring via people, his spirit using people to engage in demonic behaviors, which is designed to monitor another person, and it's occurring in a specific environment, a supernatural environment. Noise and the maintenance of engineer light and presence is how monitoring is underway, and that's what the state of California is engaging in. Now, that entity that is demon-possessed lacks self-control and is therefore incapable of appreciating and recognizing that their demonic behavior is being documented and criminalized to prosecute in a manner that is proven. This is not just somebody that's speaking to spiritual things that no one understands and no one is going to be able to certify with regard to the absence of any supporting evidence. No, that's not what we have going on here. Everything that is alleged, everything that I asserted at the outset is fully supported with not just evidence, but a body of evidence. And that's what's engaged in what is stalking with amplified noise. While I'm speaking to what crimes that in court you don't want any association with, but that's what the demon's just admittedly engaged in while amplified noise is heard inside of this apartment, which is filled with engineer light, while I'm being monitored, while the stalker is being documented in real time. That is going to the very demented mind state. The entity that's so obsessed with me, that is so heavily stalking me, that is so blindsided by their stalking me, not understanding that they're going to be prosecuted and stopped from stalking me because they're not able to stop themselves. They're going to be stopped by the law. And that includes the government, because the government's the one that is obsessively monitoring me, obsessively studying me. And that's what I want to speak to, while the co-defendants at Woodside Senior Apartments provided an additional admission against themselves with regard to the ceaseless gang stalking that they are engaging in. Now, the entity that is gang stalking, again, like I've stated, federal group stalking and monitoring, gang stalking is witchcraft exposed. It's demonic activity unveiled. Demonic activity is happening right in your face. Demonic activity goes out of its way to appear very normal to you. A woman or a man, a person pushing a stroller with a baby in it. You are accustomed and a condition, and you're not weird for assuming that that's perfectly normal behavior. And in fact, you should, a normal person would associate that with normal behavior, and Satan knows that, and so does the government. The malicious government knows that, and you are looking at the bigger picture when you are subject to a very malicious pattern of conduct that is designed to monitor another person. A man or a woman pushing a stroller with a child that's perhaps even cooing, making any noise, crying even, The stroller, the wheels rolling on the sidewalk that's making noise, the movement as they are pushing that stroller and going by past your person is called light activity creation. While the bodies are in movement in what is not sunlight, it's engineered light, and the baby crying, and the person on their cell phone while the baby is crying and they're pushing the stroller, and the person on their cell phone talking, trying to comfort the baby while they're walking by you, pushing that stroller. A very normal appearance on the surface is accomplishing what is monitoring by a very intentional and malicious actor as well. They are not ignorantly under a fake sun that sits over the sidewalk for 11 hours. Which is supposed to be the stage where a demon-possessed sex offender in custody of a child engaging in domestic terrorism and psychological torture against one that they know is documenting it, and thinks that a child in a stroller and a cell phone and comfort talking to a child is the mask where they can gang stalk someone in plain view, conspicuous stalking by the government. Remember, the government itself is wearing the mask of a person that's pushing a stroller with a baby inside that's crying and cooing, not talking to you, not addressing you, fully monitoring you, and psychologically torturing you. Stalking you, in other words, in a manner that the ordinary person is not able to prove, not even able to recognize. That's the significance of gang stalking. That's what's underway at Woodside Senior Apartments. And the gang stalking, that's demonic activity. And you know, demonic activity is trying very hard to look very much like normal behavior. Satan wants to appear as an angel of light. Satan wants to appear as someone that is very much sane, someone that is very much healthy, someone, and I'm saying someone because Satan is a spirit that uses people, okay? So that's what I mean. People that are very much abnormal, very much unhealthy, very much deranged and demented. Hence, a 55 unemployed gang stalker in a senior citizen complex stalking another woman after 11 o'clock at night. And all I'm doing is sitting on my couch and documenting the fact that she's stalking. And the demons begin manifesting. That's very unhealthy. And it's also inhumane. And it's government action. The government is accountable. The government is going to be prosecuted for it. And what I want to speak to is what the government has been doing. And the government is acting via the people of the state whose name I know. And as I've documented the population, you don't have to know the entities' names in order to prosecute gang stalking. Gang stalking is happening in the specific environment. Gang stalking is happening pursuant to what is monitoring you. Everything that you do as you do it in engineered light. All right, that's the P.O.C. of monitoring. And it's also what is psychological torture while you're being monitored. That is psychological torture, an unabated program of psychological torture. It's also psychological torture because of the ways in which the entity is monitoring you through strangers, through the government. That acts directly because the people of the state are the government. That's what's so malicious about what the United States government is doing when we have a constitution. And that's what's also speaking to the high level of malice, is getting to what is demonic. That high level of malice is diabolical. That's of Satan. That is demonic. The entity that is representing itself as being guided by a constitutional framework is maintaining an inhumane and unconstitutional system of surveillance, and it's demonic. The demonic means is a means of it existing in plain sight and you not being aware of what it is that you're looking at. It's not cute and adorable. It's perverted. It's predatory. It's psychopathic. It's very threatening when gang stalking is exhibited in the ways in which I've shown you, where the elements are what you are analyzing, not the outward superficial veneer that Satan, that the corrupt gang stalking government needs you to rely on. They need you to rely on. You're just looking at a baby in a baby carriage and a woman or a man pushing that stroller. That's all that you need to look at. And that alone itself is attributing innocence, is attributing what is the absence of any targeting of another person. That's what Satan is relying on you to focus on. Unfortunately, that is not the way in which you are engaging in any federal investigation. When you are going beneath the veil, you're going beneath the surface at all times. And you aren't necessarily doing so, and it is automatically suspect, by the way, when you are in an environment, regardless of pushing a stroller or bearing a gun. You are under the fake sun. You are in engineered light. Everyone's aware of the multiple shadows that surround. You're in that environment, contrary to what the demon-possessed would like it to be. It's not about what you like. It's about what the investigation requires. And that would require any prudent investigation to go beneath the surface in that environment that is already speaking to what is suspicious. This is how the unintelligent This is how the high school graduates gang stalking, the unemployed gang stalking, the degenerates that are gang stalking, even the college graduates and the public officials gang stalking because they think that there's something different. They think that they're powerful. They think that there's some sort of distinction from the unemployed bum on the street that's gang stalking you by sitting by the dumpster, and they're not. They're equally inferior. They're equally perverted. They're equally obsessed. They're equally demon possessed. They're equally criminal and psychopathic. There's no respecter amongst the demon possessed, and God is no respecter of persons. And this demon is using the bum sitting beside the dumpster gang stalking me in the same way that he's using the chief of police of any police department, because I've documented whatever city I'm in, they're gang stalking me. I've already proven that. The body of evidence, which is the P.O.C. The entity that's gang stalking is doing so through a corrupt population, and contrary to what mankind would like, man that has made himself his own God, esteeming himself as higher or lower than another based on what he's acquired. And as you are also aware, the demon possessed acquired things through theft, through what is worshiping demonic spirits, worshiping Satan. This is how the demon says those who are in darkness engage in what is all manner of lust, what all the ways in which man is acquiring riches, selling his soul, in other words, in order to get farther in life, just to die and burn in hell for all of eternity. But this is what the those that are esteeming themselves as higher than each other based on the earthly gains that they acquire, and then they die and it's left to someone else that repeats the same pattern. Nonetheless, the entity that is gang stalking, again, amplified noise at 12:02 a.m. These are the old people that are not asleep. All right, and neither is Tracy Banks. But the entity that is gang stalking is doing so as the system of federal group stalking monitoring is under no circumstances common sense. When you're looking at a fake son that's sitting over the sidewalk all day long, whether you're bearing a gun, obviously threatening someone, or pushing a stroller, psychologically torturing another, and threatening in a manner that's not obviously recognized, absent knowledge of the totality of circumstances and facts. That's very threatening, very malicious, very psychologically harmful. You're going to investigate that, and it's automatically suspect. Everything is automatically suspect, by the way, in this specific environment where the demon possessed have failed to appreciate how fully exposed they are. Pattern of conduct is speaking to what it is that I've exposed with regard to documenting and prosecuting the government for federal group stalking, monitoring, gang stalking, and it's witchcraft, it's demonic activity. This is also underway with regard to the psychological warfare. The demon possessed that sought to gang stalk me into a mental asylum to criminally defame my character by gang stalking me in a way that they thought was never going to be proven, by stealing my content, by the way, and profiting from stealing my content while keeping me subject to gang stalking in order that I would produce more and more content so that they can steal my ideas more and more, profit from it. This is the same entity that is engaging with a psychological warfare. This is the demon possessed that are not only stalking you in relevant position, they're stalking, gang stalking is pursuant to demonic activity, stalking in the spirit, monitoring spirits. And I'm, again, engaging in what is the ongoing exposure of the demon possessed, and that's what I want to hone in on. This is what, again, not only Tracy Banks is a demon possessed person, like her son Eric Corey Spencer is a demon possessed person. It is necessarily so the fact that the person Eric Corey Spencer is shacked up with in his Oakland duplex apartment, whatever shack he lives in, where he's relying on government assistance and abusing the government to do things like pay for groceries, while he should have a job as a grown man supporting himself. He relies on the sexual activity of his mother, the criminal and fraudulent behaviors that they engage in together to support himself. He's a common criminal, and he was born from this common criminal, Tracy Banks, and they're both demon-possessed gang stalkers, and their fraudulent and criminal acts are speaking to their character, which, again, absent your knowledge that these are demon-possessed people, you're ignorant about it. The entity is engaging in what is gang stalking me in concert with the demons, who are, again, Eric Spencer and Tracy Banks, who are engaged in what is spiritually attacking as well. This is what Tracy Banks is doing. She's a witch. She practices witchcraft. She worships Satan. She engages in spiritually attacking through to what is also sexual activity. She's specifically a Jezebel spirit. All right. This is something that she is sharing with her sex partner. Again, Eric Corey Spencer is not only sick because he's gang stalking his sister, which is relevant to what is predatory and sexually violent and obsessive behavior of your sister, blood relative. I would never have sex with Eric Spencer, but he's engaging in what is a satanic targeting system, where out of his mouth he would say that he's not sexually interested in me, his sister, but he's gang stalking. You need to understand the spirit, the perverted, sexually motivated conduct of federal group stalking and monitoring. And Eric Corey Spencer, a demon-possessed person, is fully engaged in that and has been for years, with the intent to murder and kidnap me and profit from it with his gang stalking, demon-possessed mother, who is relying on the elderly at Woodside Senior Apartments. These old folks are getting locked up. They're getting locked up for gang stalking with this sex offender, Tracy Banks, who was sexually violating me as a child, molesting, showing me her body parts, walking around naked, trying to, they call that grooming, showing me pornography as I was a little girl. Her husband, the convicted sex offender and also sex offender by virtue of gang stalking, grooming me as well, showing me his penis, engaging in what is filling on Tracy Banks's bare breasts while anticipating me to walk in on that. This is how they were both grooming me. And this is what the entity is doing while they're gang stalking, still engaging in what is a pattern of sexual violence, while demons who are literally out of their right minds are pacing around inside of the apartment at 12:06 a.m. while I refer to gang stalking that has been committed as a way of life and in my amongst my bloodline, including Eric Corey Spencer and Tracy Banks, a pedophile who is also a demon-possessed Jezebel spirit, gang stalking. And what needs to be known is not only is, in other words, the demon possession is also that which the demon-possessed cannot fake. The demon-possessed are going to engage in behavior that's unlawful, that's perverted, that's inappropriate, even where they try to hide behind a pious religious demeanor, which Tracy Banks doesn't. She can't even act like a Christian. She does not attend church. She does not read the Bible. She does not know scripture. She never has. She never has. I did not grow up in a Christ-centered household, obviously, but I didn't even grow up in a household that acted like they were believers. Tracy Banks is an unbeliever. She is somebody that only uses the name of Jesus when she is creating audible activity, and I call this demon out. That's when she blasphemes the name of Christ, and it's nothing other than audible activity. She has never attended church. Not that going to church in and of itself is speaking to somebody that's not demon-possessed. I attended church amongst a demon-possessed entity that was engaged in criminal conduct of gang stalking. Reference the documentation on October 17th, in October of 2017, where it's on the podcast, and you will hear me referring to what is a means of harassment by a demon-possessed gang stalker, Gregory Hooper, at the facilitating venue Sunrise Church in Ontario, California, where the sun in the natural environment is never going to be over that church, contrary to what I was subject to for years, being kept under surveillance by a bunch of demons who play church on Saturdays and Sundays and Wednesdays when they have their Bible studies. Right? The entity is engaging in what is the P.O.C. at an apartment complex, and the specific environment is shared amongst the fake church, where a whole bunch of demons are pacing and monitoring, and at an apartment complex where a whole bunch of demons are pacing to monitor, and they're doing so at 12 o'clock in the morning. Right? The sex offender Tracy Banks has been engaged in a pattern of sexual violence. She's now doing so as one to be convicted for federal group stalking and monitoring. She is a Jezebel, spiritually attacking, engaging in what is monitoring me in concert with the demons in relevant position, doing so while aware of the fact that I am documenting it as well, doing so pursuant to what is ongoing obsession, irrational obsession, and this is that which is informing what is necessary pursuant to making sure that psychopaths, gang stalkers, corrupt officials, if Jason Isaac Fields actually has a position with the government, he is gang stalking, not investigating. He is spiritually monitoring, not providing any justice, not stopping the pattern of conduct. And that corruption is relevant to the prosecution of the government. That corruption is relevant to the federal laws that are going to be used to keep every gang stalker like Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac Fields, those whose name I know, far from ever being in my presence, from ever stalking me again and avoiding federal prison. Jason Isaac Fields is nothing other than somebody that's being permitted to get away with terrorism and psychological torture, which is a tragic injustice, were he to avoid federal prison for gang stalking in the first place. It's not different from gang stalking with the Ontario Police Department, from kidnapping and criminally defaming, from kidnapping, assaulting, and battering and poisoning my person, and being subject to federal prison. Gang stalking as a corrupt public official, whatever that agency is, you're subject to federal prison for that. Why would that be different? It's not. He's so intricately engaged in the pattern of conduct. He's engaged in a sexual relationship with the hitman, and he is a hitman himself, Tracy Banks. They're engaged in a sexual relationship together, which is relevant for just for knowledge as an aside. Their sex cult that they're a part of, all this perversion, they're summoning demonic spirits, which are not overwhelming. They're not going to change their inevitable demise. They're not going to change their exposure. They're not going to change what Christ has already decreed, which is exposing what Satan is doing and who Satan is using, and who also is going to be permanently removed from my life, permanently, and it's going to be supported with law. Jason Isaac Fields shall not avoid federal prison either. And it's nothing other than the same corrupt government engaging in this same system that I'm exposing, where somebody as sick, as criminal, as unethical, as corrupt as Jason Isaac Fields, abusing a government position that he only got because he's been targeting me, not of his own achievements, not of his own capabilities. This person is been given position based on who I am and his ability for the government to use him to target me. Period. He's nothing special. He's a demon-possessed gang stalker, as irrelevant as the bum sitting beside the dumpster, targeting me under the fake sun and engineered light while they're all pacing all around me. This demon is engaging in what is stalking in the spirit, begging for sex with me, entirely pathetic, while he's, again, under the same possession of this Jezebel spirit, where he's somebody that is engaged in what is a promiscuous lifestyle, paying men and women for sex, having sex with my mother, and then gang stalking me and begging me for sexual activity in the spiritual realm. This person is sick. This person is very, very sick. All right, and this is calling out the demons that are targeting, and he is gang stalking while the demon in Unit 55 is stalking with amplified noise at 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. This is the pattern of conduct, right? It is currently 12:43 a.m. The obsession with monitoring me by Jason Isaac Fields, by the government, includes an obsession with monitoring me while I sleep. This demonic and inhumane and unconstitutional and unethical government practice of gang stalking and monitoring includes that obsession with monitoring me, including while I am sleeping. That's how obsessed these demons with this Jezebel spirit are. This is how obsessed with me they are. That's a threat. That level of obsession with another person is very threatening. It's unnerving. It's disconcerting. It's alarming. It's also harassing while they're monitoring you, but it's also very, very, it's very sick. It's very, very sick. And this is relevant to the mental illness when you are associating the person with that behavior and the person with that malicious conduct. Okay, the obsession with monitoring me as I experience gang stalking and as I document that sick system in an effort to study my quote unquote process and how I think and operate. That's how deep the obsession with monitoring me is, including by gang stalkers who are monitoring in the spirit, such as Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac Fields, who are both obsessed with me as I expose them and I expose the demonic and I document it in order to prosecute it and I align it with what is legal analysis. The demon possessed are obsessed with my process and how I think and how I document it and how I experience it, while they're also begging to have sex with me. This is how obsessed they are. This is how sick they are. And this is speaking to the sick system that the government has underway. Studying American citizens, keeping them subject to experiments, and then engaging in what is voyeurism, sitting back and watching them. All right, that's pursuant to the third point, the obsession with monitoring me and a delusional effort to try to control. They're not controlling anything. They've engaged in this experimentation upon someone like myself they can't control me. They are inferior to the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of all truth, The spirit that's not using songs to convey ideas, those are the demons that are monitoring. That's not the Holy Spirit. All right, these are monitoring spirits that are obsessively consumed with my vagina and having sex with it. I'm not a person to the demon possessed. I'm a sexual object to them. The entity is engaging in what is the obsession with sex, and it's to the degree that a person that's in a position in the physical as being my mother is spiritually attacking and is obsessively consumed with and begging to have sex with me. That's how sick this system is. That's how sick these people are. This obsession with monitoring me and a delusional effort to control how and what I think, especially pertaining to being monitored. So in other words, the entity is monitoring me, gang stalking me, and then sitting back and engaging in what is voyeurism. Voyeurism is something that can be prosecuted in the physical, such as placing cameras in my home and watching me undress every day, watching me carry on my life as I take off my clothes and as I experience gang stalking, and I go to my window in my bedroom and I get the LAPD stalking in helicopter, and they're watching me with no clothes on as I cover myself up and go and document the gang stalking by helicopter, and I'm getting the engineer light shooting about across my ceiling. The demons are sitting up watching me, my engaging in sexually perverted voyeurism, and also watching me experience and document and process it mentally, this pattern of conduct. Very sick, and it's very demonic what the government is doing. And this is what Jason Isaac Fields has been engaged in with his sex partner Tracy Banks, who are both hostile. They would like to murder and kidnap me and defame my character, steal my content, but they're also sexually obsessed with me. This is the spirit of Satan with that conflicting sentiment toward me, that conflicting attitude toward me. It's demonic. All right. This is, again, the entity that is not capable of controlling. They're not controlling my mind. They're not changing what the narrative is. They're not changing the body of evidence. I am exposing how the demon possessed engage in targeting targeted individuals that are ignorant about the ways in which Satan will attack you. Satan will attack your life, your life circumstances, will attack your mind even. And absent your knowledge about that and your ignorance to how that affects you in the physical, and it's very clear. The entity that's gang stalking you at the job is the entity that's stopping your ability to make money and support yourself, affecting your livelihood, affecting how you're able to live, affecting your ability to pay your bills. I'm speaking to the ongoing damages that I continuously suffer while the government is sitting back engaging in voyeurism. All right. The entity is failing at changing what it is that I expose about it, and is also at the same time hostile and fascinated by it. That is Satan that wants to be God. That spirit in operation cannot be God. Well, and I'm not saying that I'm God, but I have the spirit of God in me. So Satan is obsessed. That obsession is shown through the demon possessed, who are gang stalking, who are both hostile to it and also fascinated by it. But it is no excuse. All I'm doing is breaking that down in order to practically understand how this is working out, what the government is doing, and the purposes behind what the government is doing. And my ability to do so is the inability of the government to control my mind and stop me from doing what it is that God has called me to do, which is call out this corrupt system of federal group stalking and monitoring and the demon possessed population that are targeting people in ways in which they're ignorant about and you need to be aware of, in an environment that you're ignorant about, and you need to be aware of it. The entity is, again, obsessed with monitoring me and a delusional effort, a delusional campaign. They are still trying, in other words, to try to control how I think and what I think about what they're doing. And they're not accomplishing that, and yet they continuously do that. In the same way that the entity is gang stalking. When you're surrounded by evidence for what is a prosecution, you're surrounded by evidence that's not making the targeted individual look like they're under any circumstances lacking whatsoever. You look like an advanced person with this body of evidence. They have failed in that endeavor, and yet they're still gang stalking. This is the same demonic spirit that is inspiring ongoing monitoring, voyeurism, and a delusional effort to try to control what I think and how I think, pertaining to being monitored and studied by a corrupt group of perverts, thieves, stalkers, and liars. And they personally disdain being identified for targeting me in relevant position and targeting me in the spirit. But that's not my concern either. This is the enemy, and the enemy is using those like Jason Isaac Fields who needs therapy. And while the entity tries to include such things in the YouTube feed where I'm subject to surveillance, the entity is projecting. This incestuous sex offender that's been engaged in pedophilia since I was a child and is obsessed with my genitalia, stalking the spiritual realm, begging to have sex with me, This is going for what is documentation on May 6, 2025, despite the fact that it is going into May 7th. And the demons are gang stalking. Jason Isaac Fields is monitoring me, while the demon in Unit 55 is a means of amplified noise. Jason Isaac Fields is monitoring me while his sex partner is in relevant position on the opposite side of this living room wall. That is Tracy Banks. And in concert with all the other co-defendants that are also not asleep. They're not sleeping in the specific environment. The demon possessed, contrary to what you're supposed to think about people who are advanced in age and who are walking around on walkers and could be possibly engaged in anything as unheard of and as despicable and as disgusting as federal group stalking and monitoring. That's exactly what they're doing while they're wide awake, focused on me and focused on my vagina. And that's why those sex offenders are being identified and prosecuted as an entity and also individually, specifically with Woodside Senior Apartments. It's 12:52 a.m. This is P.O.C. Okay, a couple of things. First of all, the demon in Unit 55 is wide awake, stalking and monitoring with Tracy Banks, who's seeking to control the documentation that's going on. I'm going to document that. I'm capturing it in screenshots. And the demon is, again, monitoring me with simultaneity to my observations about the content that was intentionally blocked out pertaining to Tracy Banks being a pedophile, pertaining to Tracy Banks using witchcraft, spiritually attacking and pleading while and begging for spiritually speaking. She's monitoring in the spirit and she's begging me to have sex with her. While I'm observing this and noting this and using my device, this is where the demon above me on the couch in the living room in her 600 square foot apartment, where her bedroom is not in alignment with the couch in the living room. We're walking around in the living room, getting up and off of whatever furniture isn't causing the walls and the ceiling to crack, was simultaneous to my operation of my device with my observation about audio content that was removed from the podcast. This is where amplified noise is happening. The sex offender that's also engaged in what is monitoring my vagina with this incestuous sex offender, Tracy Banks. Her license plate is 5WB715. She represents Paul Leon in the city of Ontario that's gang stalking with the population at Woodside Senior Apartments, who are all going to federal prison inside of this building, filled with units 49 through 64 and the adjacent building 33 through 48. They're all sharing criminal presence in the path and the engineer light and maintaining surveillance in the way that this demon in Unit 55 is at 1:51 in the morning on May 7th, where Tracy Banks is not sleeping, by the way, where content about her is being published in the podcast, regardless of the entity that's engaged in federal stalking. Very well. In the same way that the entity is stalking with amplified noise inside of this apartment, also the content that happens to be about Tracy Banks spiritually attacking me and on an ongoing, constant basis, harassing with regard to wanting to have sexual activity with me. This is relevant to the Jezebel spirit that relies on sexual activity in order to spiritually monitor and spiritually attack. She is, again, a mother that is seeking for incest, while a demon-possessed person is what she is gang stalking me and monitoring in the spirit. And this person, who happens to be my mother, who gave birth to me, who was a female, I'm not only not a homosexual, I'm not engaged in what is incest with any person in my bloodline, including Tracy Banks, who sickens me. But she is engaged in the demonic by targeting me in the spirit, and is always engaging what is harassing me with regard to begging to have sex with me. She's doing that while she is also gang stalking, and the content about that I included in my podcast is removed from the podcast. So upon my reviewing, doing my diligent work of documenting and knowing that the stalker is always trying to hide evidence about it being a stalker and a sex offender and a demon, I'm reviewing the evidence that's removed as I observe that, and demons are indeed monitoring in the spirit. So with simultaneity, the demon that's in the living room, where the impossible sound of cracking of ceiling and walls, which is occurring in what is the impossible occurrence and manifestation of light, in engineer light in the dark, and what covers this property, surveillance by the elderly who are going to prison. And the one in Unit 55 who's, again, demonstrating severe mental illness, that's why she's going to a mental asylum. Her license plate, again, the one that you can see exhibiting mental illness and high level of malice and furtherance of murdering and kidnapping and psychologically torturing me. She's on video on November 6, 2024 under the fake sun at 12:15 and gang stalking with the same city of Ontario that's doing so at 1:53 in the morning. And she's also doing so with impunity, meaning she's more obsessed with me than concerned with the fact that she's going to be subject to what is an arrest, and she's going to be subject to a federal prosecution, and she's going to be prosecuted for the sex offender that she is acting in furtherance of the intent to criminally defame me, murder me, steal content from me, sexually violate me, and then obstruct justice as I document her as that gang stalker. That's relevant to the amplified noise that's happening at this time while I'm documenting the content that is removed from the audio podcast, and I'm going to include that doc content with regard to what the entity sought to remove. This is, again, the pedophile Tracy Banks that's trying to protect herself from me, trying to protect herself by removing the content from the podcast. This is relevant to federal stalking conduct. It's not a coincidence when that's happening. Okay? The content speaking to Tracy Banks being a superior person that's a prophet of God and being one who is God sent, that would not be content that would be removed. It's not a coincidence. It's certainly not a coincidence in the engineered light, amongst the amplified audible activity, amongst the entity that's gang stalking directly, which the city of Ontario has already established. And they gave me that evidence. I already had it. They reiterated the fact that they are gang stalking 2024 and 2025. All right, those are the elderly that are obsessed with me and obsessed with my genitalia. And the sex offender Tracy Banks is going to be exposed with regard to what she's doing, both in the spirit and in relevant position, despite the fact that this entity sought to remove it. And that's also relevant to the intent to obstruct justice, while the demon in 55 is stalking with simultaneity to my mental observations. This is P.O.C. Alrighty, this is documentation which is specifically noting the intentional and deliberate removal of evidence. This is evidence that is under surveillance by the same gang stalker. That is the government. That is the people of the state. That is literally the sex offenders at Woodside Senior Apartments, the gang stalker AVANATH Capital Management, also a commercial sex offender. This is how the entity is gang stalking. This is how the entity is engaging in psychological torture through sexually violent methods, monitoring in a bathroom, for example. It's happening via AVANATH Capital Management at AVANATH Capital Management's apartment in AVANATH Capital Management's apartment buildings where the residents, the population, the government is gang stalking. That is understanding and documenting and prosecuting for exactly what the entity does, exactly what the people of the state commit on behalf of the gang stalking government, which is engaging in sexual violence. AVANATH is thereby being prosecuted as a sex offender. You're prosecuting the government that's maliciously targeting an American citizen in unprecedented manners because the government's engaging in unprecedented criminal conduct. The facts are what you're following to get to that conclusion, and justice requires prosecution for that conduct. If that leads to commercial actors such as AVANATH Capital Management being exposed in what is to be understood as sexual violence, where the government is engaging in surveillance and the people of the state yield their properties, yield their businesses, yield their employment practices as a means of facilitating that sexual violence, meaning it can't occur but for that company engaging in it, then that company will be exposed and prosecuted as the sex offender that it is. Period. That's very plain. Any sex offender that is an individual that is stalking someone into a gymnasium and corners them in that gymnasium and then rapes them, you're going to prosecute that sex offender and that stalker. In the same way, when you are subject to psychological torture, gang stalking, surveillance in a bathroom where your genitalia is being kept under surveillance, and that third-party facilitating venue is not a private residence, and it's also known and to be held to the account of that third-party gang stalking property management company because its employees are also not coincidentally engaging in facilitation at that facilitating environment. And the pattern of conduct requiring a facilitating environment in order for this satanic surveillance system to remain underway and to be executed, that is removing the coincidence. That is removing the ignorant engagement in gang stalking. That is removing the entity's reasonable basis to not be held responsible civilly and criminally, by the way. So the entity is engaging in what is sexual violence, and the government is a sex offender. The government is a sex offender in concert with the people of the state. That includes AVANATH Capital Management in the bathrooms where AVANATH Capital Management is gang stalking and profiting from gang stalking, which is superseding everything that they would assert as legitimate business means and business engagement. And it's not. It's actually malicious facilitation of the state's pattern of conduct, the basis whereby you are prosecuting the people of the state that are going by the commercial identity as AVANATH Capital Management, LLC, headquartered in Irvine, California. Now, as I'm documenting, it's this entity that's interfering with evidence that just so happens to be identifying them and also I just so happen to be expounding upon documentation that is hard to hear. The stalker and the sex offender and the demon, they don't want to hear it. And they also don't want you to hear it. And so that's why I'm going to go through not only what was removed, but also the timestamp. So I did also, for documentation purposes, the full audio, which is called voice number 2. That audio is uploaded to the Google Drive for you to listen to, and you will just hear long absences of my voice, just a pause, you'll hear nothing. That's audio context that's audio content that was removed pursuant to what I've stated is the case, and what the entity demonstrates through its stalking behavior, stalking with light, stalking with noise, and stalking with presence behaviors, that the entity is keeping me under surveillance via communication devices and on the venue of the internet. And so I just want to make sure that that is clear. It's federal stalking with the intent to obstruct justice. Title 18, Section 22618, subsections 1 and 2. All right, so pursuant to the criminal intent to obstruct justice, which also AVANATH Capital Management is going to be prosecuted for, the demon in Unit 55 is, while I am editing the audio so that you don't have to listen to 30 minutes of just silence, I'm removing those gaps of silence, and then I'm adding to the podcast the documentation where the content was removed and what I was speaking about, because no sex offender is going to escape being specifically identified, not only by identity, but also by their conduct and their history of documented conduct. And that includes the pedophiles and the sex offenders at Woodside Senior Apartments. And in the podcast, I am documenting by reference. I'm referencing the theory of how you're prosecuting federal group stalking and monitoring. I am expounding upon, as you can hear yourself. So what I'm going to focus on is just picking up where I left off. And this is just giving explanation regarding what content was removed. So at approximately 40 minutes and 53 seconds to 43 minutes and 10 seconds, I am in the midst of a discussion regarding the obvious identification of gang stalkers. And I'm also referencing to where I'm at, but this is applying to anywhere, because the specific environment, wherever it's at, everything is suspicious. And this is what I'm in the midst of discussing in the podcast at 40 minutes to 43 minutes and 10 seconds. This is where content is removed, and it happens to be content about the defendants at Woodside Senior Apartments who are wearing the mask of gang stalking in a psychologically harmful manner, and in a manner that's supposed to provide what is the hidden agenda with regard to targeting someone and threatening them right in their face, while gang stalking via a male or a female pushing a stroller on the sidewalk. And what you are not aware is what is engineered light, not sunlight, under what is the fake sun, not the natural environment where the sun would be. And I want to be clear, engaged in ongoing constant movement, which would be beyond Woodside Senior Apartments from units 33 through 64. The entity is gang stalking at Woodside Senior Apartments, specifically stalking in the path amongst these two buildings, incorporating units 33 through 64, and it is proven by the maintenance of the fake sun, which I've documented, which is remaining over the apartments, in alignment that is rising and setting over me at units 33 through 64 at Woodside in Ontario in the state of California, which is speaking to a very specific pattern of conduct that is readily identifiable, and making that third party pushing a stroller in the specific environment on the sidewalk very threatening, as you are aware, the totality of circumstances, and that is stripping off the mask of the people of the state who are demon possessed and are fully engaged in what is targeting one specific person. All right. The entity is engaging in a pattern of conduct, and that is the removal of the mask that the people of the state wear, where they are clearly shown and obviously shown to be engaging in gang stalking, psychological torture, threatening and bullying conduct, and doing so in a manner that is inherently psychologically harmful, where you are ignorant about the totality of circumstances, where no ordinary person should make allegations that you are not able to prove. And you are intended, it is by design, to be one that appears as though you're mentally ill, that you're paranoid, all right, or that you're hallucinating, that you're, in other words, suffering from some mental illness. That is removing the mask of the demons that are obviously engaged in the criminal pattern of conduct in a very threatening manner, as threatening as pointing a gun to my face. The entity that's pushing a stroller with a child that's crying while they're on their cell phone, and they're not even addressing me, nor do they have to, while they're creating light activity, while they're engaged in relevant positioning, and while they're creating audible activity, or they could be silently crossing path. The wheels on the stroller don't make any noise. They're not on the phone. The baby's not crying. The audible activity is always maintained, either as I am documenting, but the entity is always maintaining a method of audible activity, as you've seen in the pattern of videos where the entity is amplifying plane activity by the Ontario International Airport that has no Terminal 2 or Terminal 4 anywhere near the senior citizen complex, but it's audible activity that's coexisting with what is supposed to appear on its surface. Very innocent, a disinterest, nonchalant, and totally free and constitutionally protected private speech by the third-party malicious gang stalker who was acting with an entity in furtherance of committing murder and kidnapping via criminal defamation. And the entity, what I was getting at, where this content was removed from the podcast, and it is speaking to the prosecution of the people of the state at Woodside Senior Apartments, the people of the state that are gang stalking in this specific environment with a high level of malice and also a predatory purpose. Sex offenders obsessed with my genitalia and obsessed with me, and that's based on their condition of demon possession. And the entity is as obvious. This is what I was getting to. They are as obvious as someone that is walking around under the fake sun in an engineered light, speaking gibberish in the nude. Openly, in other words, obviously engaging in what is criminal conduct. Indecent exposure is the crime that would be attributed to that. But it's even bigger than indecent exposure because they're in the engineered environment while they are walking around in the nude, monitoring another person. So I'm just using the nude person as an example of what would be obviously causing attention versus somebody that's not supposed to be obvious whatsoever and on its surface is not obvious, absent the totality of facts, knowledge of all of the facts that are relevant to identifying the P.O.C. The entity has failed to appreciate that obvious appearance as guilty, which they are, and the evidence proves that they are. And by I want to be clear, I laid out the format, the map, the code of conduct that they engage in, and the demon-possessed entity walked right in conformity to what I already stated, that which they do. I can't control the fake sun. I can't control the engineered light. I can't control the planes and the helicopters. I can't control that amplified noise creation. The entity did exactly what I said that they're doing, and they're doing it in the environment that they said that they're doing it in, which is supernatural, and so is their behavior. The entity that's engaging in conspicuous stalking, such as pushing a stroller with a child in it, while they're on their phone or whatever, that they may be on their phone. They don't have to be on their phone. Just giving you an example of somebody that's supposed to appear innocent while they're gang stalking. This is the mask that the people of the state are wearing while they're engaging in terrorism and psychological torture. And it is the government's mask that is hiding behind the people of the state who are in the shoes of the government in that facilitating environment, maintaining the elements of monitoring. And that's the malice that the entity that is gang stalking both directly and vicariously are wearing. The reveal of this specific environment is ripping off the mask of all of the demons that work for the government, meaning they get a paycheck from the government, and those that are unemployed or those that are being employed, such as LYNDA Reyes, who's being paid by AVANATH Capital Management to gang stalk. And that's what supersedes what she would claim as her position as a community property manager. Community property management doesn't include federal group stalking and monitoring, and that's what she's doing, and that's what's going to supersede with regard to her being prosecuted for a malicious engagement in the state's pattern of conduct, relying on the civilian population. That is gang stalking with it, on behalf of it, in concert with it. Cannot do it without it. All right. This is the pattern of conduct that is discussed from 40 minutes, 53 seconds to 43 minutes and 10 seconds. All right, I want to make an additional note. I did state that I documented, which is true. In October of 2017, I documented the fact that I was subject to gang stalking at the facilitating venue, which is Sunrise Church. And that is captured on the podcast in October of 2017. And the reason why you can look up October, because it's the only one in 2017. It's, if not it's the second podcast, because I believe the first podcast is the introduction, my preview, where I am in Ontario and I'm reciting all the places where the entity is gang stalking me by helicopter. That is the same video that's on my YouTube channel. So the very first, in other words, podcast is that which is captured in 2017, and it is documenting Gregory Hooper, who was a third party maliciously gang stalking under the guise of religion. Those who do not actually know Christ Jesus in a personal relationship, their criminal conduct and their demonic activity spiritually attacking me. And remember, this is the Holy Spirit is not attacking himself. The demon-possessed are engaging in what is the demonic activity of federal group stalking and monitoring. Sunrise Church is engaged in gang stalking, as I documented in October of 2017, where you will hear the conversation between myself and Gregory Hooper, who was as a demon, masquerading as a pastor and a worship arts leader at Sunrise Church, where I also went back and documented the fake son. I was subject to gang stalking at Sunrise Church for years. And then subject to what it is documented through what is a routine pattern of harassment by a bunch of hostile and envious demons, and who engaged in that. And in October 2017, I went to his office and I approached him in conformity to what scripture requires. When you have an offense against your brother, you go to them in confidence, and if they do not repent, if they don't stop doing what it is that they're doing, then the book of Matthew, paraphrasing, tells what God's process is for handling those who are in sin. And Sunrise Church is not a legitimate church, which is why I was subject to gang stalking by a bunch of demons there. But nonetheless, the ultimate test was how they walked outside of what scripture requires, if they were actually mandated by scripture, which required them to hear my contention with a witness. And then ultimately it's supposed to be brought before what would have been the church. And this is something that they totally disregarded. Gregory Hooper up and resigned from his position because that demon knew exactly, while he was monitoring me, he knew what I was working on my laptop at home. He knew all the text messages that I was saving in order to document and present it to what is the church leadership in order to confront what he had been engaged in for a prolonged period. Him and the entire demon-possessed gospel choir and worship arts team. None of them are actual worship. Well, actually, worship leaders is not a scriptural term. They are engaged in what is performing at Sunrise Church. They're not actually worshiping Christ in spirit and truth like those who actually know Christ. And also the fact that they were gang stalking me, and I was subject to a pattern of harassment by these envious demons. And the entity that was monitoring me while I was attending Sunrise Church knew what I was documenting and anticipated that. And before I could request the meeting, the entity that is Gregory Hooper immediately resigned. And again, of course, they're stating it has nothing to do with what was my request for a meeting with Gregory Hooper in the presence of another church leader. He can up and resign after 10 years of employment and what is purported success for at any time, at any moment, which is absolutely true. But the entity is engaged in gang stalking. Gregory Hooper, who is a demon and is not an actual believer in Christ, and neither is Sunrise Church an actual legitimate church, because it was gang stalking, which is demonic, and also because the entity, which is Sunrise Church, acted outside of what scripture requires. When you have an offense against your brother and you're supposed to, in love, confront them first in person, and then if they don't, then with another witness, and then if they don't still change, before the church. Sunrise Church and Gregory Hooper, demons and a demonic entity, gang stalking, which I documented the significance of this experience in October of 2017, and this was my beginning of my documentation of what is a demonic entity that's been targeting me for years. And this is what I'm speaking to. And what I referenced is that Sunrise Church is in Ontario. So forgive me because I'm always documenting Ontario, California. So it is actually in Rialto, California. And my documentation, because I've reviewed my own evidence, and the evidence is accurate, what it is that the videos and the images show, regardless of whether I state the wrong city, for example. And that is my body of evidence is never false. What it is that I might recite regarding what my evidence reflects and that's only minor. And that's because I'm thinking very quickly and I'm going through a lot of information. I'm documenting a lot of people at one time. So I am a human being, but nonetheless, this is specifically Rialto, California, where Sunrise Church is at. And I want to make sure that that's clear because I stated Ontario, California. It is in the same San Bernardino County. There will never be a Sun Over Sunrise church in Rialto at Ayala and Riverside Avenue in Rialto, California at any time in the day when the entity is engaged in the documented conduct of having the sun rising and setting at Woodside Senior Apartments. And it's the same very obvious pattern of conduct and amongst that legal analysis when you're recognizing the specific environment. Sunrise Church is a gang stalker. Gang stalkers are demon possessed. It's a fake church, and they're a bunch of demons, not ignorantly engaging in that demonic system. The fact that I was subject to harassment for years is the outward demonstration of their demon possession, their hostility to me. All right. But that's what I wanted to include. And this is within content that was removed from 49 minutes and 17 seconds and to 1 hour and 18 minutes and 12 seconds. Okay, additional content that is removed for a large chunk of amount of time, at 49 minutes and 17 seconds to 1 hour and 18 minutes and 12 seconds. I am also discussing several topics. And one of these topics is regarding the Jezebel spirit that is possessing Tracy Banks. She's a demon possessed person, and this is a witch again that is again wanted to be by gang stalking me and monitoring me in the spirit and gangs, which I've proven the fact that you can't. How do I know? Because anyone that would allege, well, how do I know that she's monitoring you in the spirit? And because of the evidence of federal group stalking and monitoring, the evidence of gang stalking, which I've proven by tangible evidence, is relevant to what it is that I'm stating the demon possessed are doing in the spirit, where they're invisible and they know that you don't know what's going on in the spirit. And they also want to falsely depict my character by gang stalking me so that you don't listen to what it is that I'm telling you that demons are doing. So that's the evidence whereby I have already established my credibility and the absence of any need for me to make up that demons are doing anything to anybody out here, including targeting me. Okay, Tracy Banks is a demon-possessed person, and the particular spirit is a Jezebel spirit. She has multiple personalities, however, so there is multiple demons, but the chief of them is a Jezebel spirit. That Jezebel spirit is relevant to what is a sexually perverted spirit. And the sexual perversion of that Jezebel spirit, it manifests in many different ways, and I will go through that. It manifests itself in incest relationships, sex amongst family members. That's the spirit of Jezebel manifesting, that perverted spirit that desires sex with your blood relatives. That's a perverted spirit. That's a Jezebel spirit manifesting. Pedophilia, sexual activity, a desire, an impulse to have sexual activity, sexual relations with children. This is, again, another manifestation of a perverted spirit, that Jezebel spirit. And any sort of sexual activity, even wanting to view. You don't have to necessarily engage in sexual activity with a child, but you like to watch them naked. You like to view them when they take their clothes off. That's a perverted spirit. That's the same Jezebel spirit. Bestiality and a desire to have sex with animals. That's the same perverted spirit. That's a Jezebel spirit manifesting in another manner. Promiscuity, group sex. This what they refer to as polyamorous lifestyles, all sorts of fancy little revolutionary 2025 language. It's the same Jezebel perverted spirit. It's abnormal. We have been conditioned in the world to accept satanic things that are literally of the devil, having sex with multiple people, at one time. Demonic. This is relevant to a lustful, perverted spirit. The body was not designed, by the way, to have, and the fact that the body can undertake that does not mean that it's designed for it. The body that is glorifying God, that was made for His pleasure, for His glory, was not made to be trafficked, to be used like a porta potty by multiple people in a sexual manner. That's not what the human body was made for. And Satan, who again hates mankind because we are made in his image, is also using those people who are demon possessed. But the people who are even demon possessed and being used by Satan, he hates them too, because they're mankind just like me. So Satan has no friends, first of all. But second of all, Satan is a spirit that is intending on conditioning the mindset to be more and more accepting of satanic ideals, satanic notions. And it is even treated as something that even men and women who are free, you're actually free when you're living in bondage, which is this sexually perverted, this lustful lifestyle behavior, such as promiscuity, etc. But that's relevant to the Jezebel spirit. It's the same perverted spirit, and it's not normal and common, contrary to what is the intentional information that's designed to condition your mind and have you more depraved, to sear you in your spirit so that you are more accepting of what Satan is trying to pump into your subconscious in order to affect the way you live and the things that you accept and the things that you surround yourself with, in order that you would live a life of sin, in other words, which is something that you have to decide to do. You decide to use your genitalia like a porta potty, regardless of what information is pumped into you. It's just you're more likely to engage in it when you're pumped with that information that, oh, this is okay. Oh, this means you're free. Oh, this means you're a man. Oh, this means you're a feminist. When you're a promiscuous whore, okay? That's sin. That's bondage. And that's the same Jezebel spirit, by the way. And it's the same with the perverted spirit. What is homosexuality? Sex with those of the same gender. That's the same Jezebel spirit. It is born of lust. It is that which is not of God, and it is the same spirit. It manifests in many different ways. And that is that same Jezebel spirit. Now, I wanted to go into what is voyeurism. This is an obsession with wanting to watch, not necessarily a child, but any person, somebody that wants to listen to someone, for example, go to the bathroom, keep someone under surveillance in a bathroom, keep someone under surveillance in their home when they're typically in your home. You're going to take your clothes off. You're perhaps even, because you are free to walk around in the nude in your home if you want to. You can put yourself on the internet in the nude if you want to as well. But that's not voyeurism where your violation is being violated. That is you openly just putting yourself on the internet, but you're free to do that. Is in the United States, that is, you're free to do that. That's different from the, but excuse me, it's not different insofar as the Jezebel spirit. I want to be clear. It's not just a matter of inflicting harm to another. It's a lustful spirit that causes one to want to engage in perverted things, such as walking around in the nude and showing everybody your genitalia, engaging in perverted acts with people that are refusing, engaging in sexual activity with those that don't consent, wanting to exert that sexual authority, sexual power over another person, wanting to show your genitalia, show your private parts, show your physical anatomy in a sexual manner designed to entice other people. This sexually explicit behavior, this is all from the same lustful spirit. It's a Jezebel spirit. So I want to make sure that that's understood. And this is relevant to voyeurism, which is another means of perversion. It's the same perverted spirit. The entity that's engaging in surveillance in bathrooms is the same Jezebel spirit that's animating what the gang stalking government is subjecting me to. It's the same Jezebel spirit that is possessing the people of the state and the government that's engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring, which is demonic activity. So in breaking down that demonic inspiration, I want to go into what it is that I was discussing as well with regard to Tracy Banks being a Jezebel spirit, and her obsession with my genitalia is proven through her criminal engagement in federal group stalking and monitoring. It also is relevant because she's been engaged in pedophilia. She is a career sex offender. She was engaged in what is grooming me as a child. Her and her convicted sex offender ex-husband, Tommy Allen Banks, who still calls on the communication device when he knows that he's being documented, calling from another state, engaging in federal stalking, crossing state lines, coming to California to gang stalk and kidnap me upon criminal summoning and criminal defamation with the Ontario Police Department in August of 2019, where Tommy Allen Banks is at Woodside Senior Apartments engaged in the P.O.C. You know what Woodside is engaged in? Tommy Allen Banks was here in August of 2019 engaging in it with Tracy Banks, with the sex offenders, the people of the state, and Eric Corey Spencer. Okay, they were all here gang stalking and engaged in what is kidnapping with the Ontario Police Department in this specific environment. Now, Tracy Banks, a demon-possessed person, a Jezebel spirit, Tommy Allen Banks, a convicted sex offender. I just want to be clear, the criminal conduct, sexual violence that's inspired by a spirit. That is a Jezebel spirit that is using a person to engage in sexual acts that are unlawful as the government outlaws specific things. Okay, the government is a sex offender itself, but the government also has laws on the books that outlaw specific violations of other people. The government is itself engaging in what is a malicious pattern of conduct that is sexually violent as well. And it is federal group stalking and monitoring, and it is pursuant to what is a Jezebel spirit that is perverted and engages in what is surveillance in sexually predatory manners for sexually motivated purposes in places such as bathrooms and places such as your private home. Okay, where the entity is engaging in this, and Tracy Banks, who has been engaged in what is referred to as gang stalking within the context of the government acting with the people of the state and the specific environment, which is remaining everywhere that I go, everywhere that I remain. This is how Tracy Banks was running her household as I was a child and growing up with her as my parent and marrying Tommy Allen Banks, who's a sex offender and a convicted sex offender under natural law. But he's also a sex offender as a gang stalker. But Tracy Banks, a Jezebel spirit, and her pedophilia occurring in ways such as grooming me, her and her, at that time, husband, Tommy Allen Banks, showing me their anatomy. And this would occur such as me being a child. And these demons were monitoring me in my mind, my young mind. Now I'm aware of that and I can speak to what they were doing because they're doing it now and as an adult, and I can clearly articulate what they're doing. And I can also prosecute them in the physical to prove what it is that they're also doing in the spirit. But nonetheless, Tracy Banks is monitoring me. And as I am encountering Tracy Banks and Tommy Allen Banks in the nude, and the door is open in a house that we're living in, and I'm walking in and I'm seeing Tommy Allen Banks holding Tracy Banks's bare breast, and I'm looking at them engaging what is sexual contact with each other, and this is a means of grooming me as a child. Tommy Allen Banks also again showing me his penis intentionally, knowingly. The entity is doing so while just keeping the bathroom door open in order that me as a child walking by will see his adult-sized penis, which he is interested in a child surveying. This is a sex offender. The entity engaging in sexual activity with each other, and keeping their door open so that me as a child, I will witness that and see that. And also the entity that is monitoring me in the spirit as well, while exposing me to such sexually explicit behaviors in order to groom me. They were also engaged in, Tracy Banks in particular, showing me pornographic content as a child in order to groom me. They are indeed pedophiles. Not only Tommy Allen Banks, but Tracy Banks. And this is inspired by the spiritual. This is a demonic spirit. It's a Jezebel spirit. This same perverted spirit is what is animating federal group stalking and monitoring. This same demonic spirit is why and how the entity is gang stalking me at Woodside Senior Apartments while I'm being monitored in the bathroom, while my panties are down, my vagina is exposed. The entity is engaging in surveillance in a manner. It's one thing. So this is the thing. It's one thing to engage in the unprecedented crime of federal group stalking and monitoring. Okay, so you're gang stalking me. You're following me as I'm going to the mall. You're following me as I'm driving to Vegas. You're following me as I'm living and going to work during the day. But the entity that's continuing that when I'm not in operation, my phone on the toilet or in the shower or while I'm washing my face or whatever it is that you're doing in the bathroom, I don't even have a phone in my hand. I'm not engaged in anything on the internet. In that space, you are nothing but a sex offender as you are stalking in the path, stalking with amplified noise, stalking in the engineer light. You're nothing but a sex offender. And this is what the demon possessed never wanted to be known. This is certainly what a government doesn't want to be known. And this is relevant to the malice of the sex offenders who are walking around lacking appropriate labels for the sex offenders that they are. And that is also Tracy Banks, who was an actual sex offender, a pedophile, lacking to date a criminal record that reflects that. Her prosecution for federal group stalking and monitoring is long overdue. Okay, so growing up in a household full of sex offenders. All right, so pursuant to the entity gang stalking, and while I'm subject to what is nothing other than demonic activity, I was raised by a demon-possessed person. I was raised up around demon-possessed people, and this is how the entity is engaging in what is the pattern of conduct of federal group stalking and monitoring amongst a demon-possessed government and a demon-possessed population in a demonic environment. And this Jezebel spirit is what inspires things such as bathroom monitoring. All right. And this is what I wanted to expound upon. And this is also relevant to, again, many other things that I'm expounding upon in the content that's removed from 49 minutes and 17 seconds to 1 hour and 18 minutes and 12 seconds. I am also expounding upon how Tracy Banks is living in my apartment home in Upland, California, which is a matter of documentation on May 23rd, 2018, where I am documenting the Upland Police Department that is in the specific environment. And I want to be clear, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 23, 24, 25. You will never have the natural environment as you look at the documentation pursuant to time of year analysis, time of day, meaning the pure duration of time, means that there would never be a sun over Upland, over my head at my apartment where I'm living off of at the Redding Arms apartment complex. And I'm in the presence of Officer Nakamura and Officer Turner, who are gang stalking me pursuant to criminal summoning in the specific environment. Because in 2024, time of year and time of day analysis applies with regard to what is documented in Upland, California in 2018. In May of 2018, well, in May of 2024, the fake sun was rising and setting over me in Los Angeles, where LAPD was engaged in the same exact pattern of conduct that I was subject to in concert with Tracy Banks, a malicious third party, a gang stalking mother, and the people of the state in concert with the state, the Upland Police Department, who in the video documented on multiple videos documented on May 23rd, 2018, from 1:54 p.m. to 2:34 p.m. The entity has the fake sun, as you will identify it in the video at 2:14 and 31 seconds. That video is 17 minutes and 27 minutes long. And I am pointing out to you the fake sun that's remaining over my head in the presence of Officer Nakamura and in the presence of what is Officer Turner in May of 2018 in Upland, California. And that is the bigger picture with regard to prosecuting that Jezebel spirit that is animating the gang stalking by the city of Ontario. Who's monitoring right now? You heard that beep? Edison is a gang stalker. And that's killing the electricity in order for the lights to turn on and off and the air cooler to turn on and off. And you know why? It's occurring because it's very alarming and very enraging what I just spoke about on this podcast. That's the P.O.C. However, Edison is a documented gang stalker, and it's also where the sex offender Anthony Jawan Kennedy worked for the gang stalker Edison as well. He's a documented gang stalker. That's why I have his image, his phone number, his address, because he's a third party. If I come into contact with you, and I know your name, you're documented for federal stalking and monitoring. But Edison is gang stalking while the electricity is killed. And the entity, just again, keeping my documentation under surveillance, engages in what is feeding off of whatever narrative that they use. Oh, yeah, well, the evidence, I clearly am documenting that the power went out, and the entity, which is Edison, and I documented it before 2025. Okay, is engaging in what is monitoring and engaging in what is stalking with light activity with simultaneity to my exposing the same pattern of conduct by the Los Angeles Police Department and the Upland Police Department as proven through the specific environment, which is published that in documentation that the whole world can look at on YouTube. Upland Police is documented on May 23rd, 2018. In May of 2018, the sun would not be over me in Los Angeles at Alvarado Gardens, where you also know there's on its face what the LAPD is doing is already suspicious. It's already suspect. But in addition to that, they're surrounded with a body of evidence speaking to them being demons who are gang stalking, not just harassing and stalking using helicopters. All right, they're so heavily documented. The documentation is enough sufficient to prosecute for harassment and an unreasonable nuisance, in addition to what is prosecution for domestic terrorism and psychological torture. But nonetheless, while I speak that, the beeping, that you need to know that that's light activity. The entity is stalking with light and activity creation, just like the demon possessed do, when I speak to what they are very hostile and very fearful of me exposing. That's the P.O.C. The electricity going out is pursuant to the entity that's controlling the environment. It's so controlled that a fake sun sits over the apartment for 11 hours in the day. That's how controlled it is. That was not a power failure. That's P.O.C. It is, by the way, Satan's form of saying amen to the truth that I speak, by the way. The entity that's engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring, what I was also expounding upon is how Tracy Banks was living in my apartment, like my documentation in May of 2018 proves, and I was forced to move from that apartment. Upon realization, which the demons that are monitoring you know what you're realizing, and they also know what you're documenting because they're keeping your documentation, your devices, and on the venue of the internet all under surveillance. But nonetheless, while I am realizing that I'm being targeted in one way or another, I am beginning to document. I'm becoming aware of it, and Tracy Banks immediately begins engaging in the P.O.C, criminally summoning the entity for no reason whatsoever. And the Upland Police Department on May 23rd are engaged in criminal summoning, regardless of the fact that I am the one that called them because Tracy Banks is harassing and threatening me inside of the apartment. It is criminal summoning because the entity has no authority under the law while they are bearing weapons, engaging in the pattern of conduct, which is the threat to my life, where they can very easily engage in what has taken my life and then controlling the narrative as though I'm threatening them when they're gang stalking me. That's why police officers engaged in the P.O.C go to federal prison, by the way. Nakamura and Officer Turner are gang stalking on video on May 23rd, 2018, pursuant to criminal summoning, as I call them and request their presence in order to report Tracy Banks, who is again attacking me inside of the apartment. And I'm reporting the battery that I was subject to earlier, where before I was still a little apprehensive to, again, this was so funny about what they stated about Black Lives Matter. She actually physically attacked me and I still was hesitant to call the police on her. All I do is wash the dishes and she calls the police for absolutely no reason whatsoever. That's called criminal summoning. And the actual normal behavior, especially in this quote unquote Black Lives Matter climate, Black people are not calling the police like that. Even when I would say we as in Black folks, when they're committing crimes against each other, they're still not, because of racism, which is real, but I'm just stating that racism is not the cause for gang stalking. Racism is real, and there is a disparate treatment amongst the Black community, and that's also informing the relationship with law enforcement. And it is very telling, the fact that she's engaged in criminal summoning and the entity is engaged in criminal summoning. It's also alarming because the police are the ones that are gang stalking, and that's exhibiting malice when you're summoning them just to give them what is a basis to be present in my face and thereby threaten me in my face, and having the ability to take my life, to murder me, and then control the narrative. And it will always be some iteration of the following: that I'm threatening them or I'm threatening another person, and they were forced to use lethal force on me and take my life. That's how the entity that is gang stalking by the police engage in what is murder. All right, but nonetheless, the Upland Police Department is gang stalking on May 23rd. This is the apartment that I was forced to leave because I am realizing, while Tracy Banks, who represents the people of the state, this is the government inside of my private home, my castle, and I didn't consent to that. I didn't consent to it at all. And I'm also realizing this is a demon-possessed psychopath who is obsessively targeting me, in the same way that I'm noticing that people that I work with are, and the people in public surrounding my apartment outside, groups of people just parked around the apartment building. And it's not because they're having a party. And I want to be clear, having a party is another iteration of the same pattern of conduct, but it wasn't because of any party. Strange people just parking outside of my apartment window. The more that I became aware of it, the more aggressive the demon-possessed became. And it included immediately by Tracy Banks, P.O.C, criminal summoning by the Upland Police. And I engaged in calling the police on May 23rd, 2018, which is the entity's unlawful threat to my life, because the police have no business engaging in what is federal group stalking and monitoring. And that's how they're threatening the lives of American citizens. People every day that call the police and they end up dead. And you have no information about federal group stalking and monitoring. All right, so the entity that's engaging in this did so on May 23rd, and this is the apartment where I moved away from Tracy Banks, who was engaged in what is physically attacking me, and also summoning the police, engaging in what I refer to as criminal summoning. It's the malicious engagement in federal group stalking and monitoring. Gang stalkers call the police when you've committed no crime. Gang stalkers call the police and make up information about you committing a crime. Gang stalkers call the police and make up concerns about you being mentally ill, which is a means whereby the entity is engaging in what is kidnapping. And I've documented this on plenty occasions by the Ontario Police Department, which engaged in gang stalking and kidnapping with the sex offender, the pedophile Tracy Banks, and her now ex-husband, Tommy Allen Banks, and Eric Spencer, who are all subject to federal prison for criminal summoning and what resulted in kidnapping on August 6, 2019. And this is that which is the same pattern of conduct at the same apartment complex, and the power outage is a means of facilitating it. That's the pattern of conduct that I'm speaking to. Okay, so with regard to following logically, I want to make sure that you understand with regard to the Upland Police that I call on May 23rd, 2018. This is pursuant to what is a pattern of conduct that I realized I was subject to. This is before I came up with any nomenclature for it, obviously. But I realized that I was threatened. I was threatened even by my own mother, who was targeting me with these strangers that I don't know together, and calling the police, suspicious of the police, but not fully, because I never would have called them. So this is speaking to the fact that I'm not paranoid, by the way, but I don't need anybody to validate. Well, the body of evidence, the P.O.C, proves who was actually mentally ill. and that's the gang stalkers. But nonetheless, it's relevant evidence pursuant to what is the absence of any actual mental illness and paranoia regarding the police stalking me, because I would not have called them. I was suspicious about the police, but I'm also still documenting because I'm not sure yet, and I'm still documenting everything, and I'm referencing my prior encounters with the police, with it, which is all in the video that you can see on May 23rd, 2018. That's what I'm referencing right now. But this is evidence of the fact that I am paying attention. I am documenting. Yes, there are police officers they are engaged in very suspicious behaviors. I'm noting it, but I have not made a categorical conclusion regarding all the police because I don't have information and evidence and circumstances to establish that yet. But I'm documenting, and that's what's happening on May 23rd, 2018. And it is evidence prosecuting every gang stalking police department, by the way, in California that are surrounded by this specific environment as the entity engaged in the documented asinine conduct of rising and setting a sun over Unit 51 at Woodside Senior Apartments. But nonetheless, the entity is gang stalking, is doing so, and relevant to what is criminal summoning. When you have what is, even while she's committed a crime against me, I'm hesitant to call the police, and that's because I don't want to see my family, even though they're hurting. And this is relevant to even the Black community that is treated in a certain manner by law enforcement. Typically, okay, because not every police officer is racist, which is a spirit. So meaning not every officer that's engaged in or is demon possessed has the spirit of racism. In other words, racism is nothing other than a demonic spirit. That is Satan that's inspiring the behavior and the mindset of another that is diminishing the value or personal identity of another person just because of their skin color, which is a manifestation of God's glory. He makes us in all manners, all colors, all hues, and it's beautiful. It's Satan that hates man, that possesses man, influences his mind. It's another spirit. But like I said, this is not all law enforcement are engaging in what are racist behaviors, is what I'm stating. But understand that it's relevant to the demon possessed. Yeah, that's a spirit, just like the Jezebel spirit, just like all the rest of it. And pursuant to that, it is informing the relationship in the physical amongst African American human beings and human beings employed by law enforcement. And the entity that is engaging in this pattern of conduct is a Black woman who was my mother, who committed a crime against me, which I could have immediately called the police for. But I am also being threatened and suspicious of police, which is also a threat to me, while I don't call them on that same day. But I just go ahead and bite the bullet and call them on May 23rd. And I referenced the battery that I was subject to earlier, and the fact that the entity is gang stalking, and the fact that a Black woman is so readily calling the police on me for no reason. Just this hair trigger conduct of, I'm going to call the police. And you can hear on the podcast in 2025, April 7th, 2025, April 14th, 2025. I'm documenting in 2024 and in 2025. She's all on my podcast on multiple occasions engaging in criminal defamation, which is what, again, a demon-possessed Jezebel spirit relies on that, trying to, again, at the same time, render my documentation illegitimate. I want to be clear, no name calling. We could just put it down. Name calling does not diminish the evidence. You can call a federal prosecutor whatever you want. The evidence will scream from the mountaintops by itself. You can remove the federal prosecutor from the evidence. The evidence exists, lives, and breathes by itself. This demon-possessed gang stalker resorts to name calling, which is legally referred to what is criminal defamation, because she's monitoring, and it's automatically published. And it's denigrating to my character. And it's also maliciously underway. She's gang stalking me because of how advanced and spiritually gifted I am, not because I'm mentally ill at all. Contrary to that, her mental illness is fully put on display because she's pacing and yelling in a specific environment, which is her apartment and at the apartment complex, demonstrating mental illness, in fact. Okay, of a psychopath. But this is the entity that is Tracy Banks engaged in criminal summoning, as I am aware of the fact, becoming aware of the fact. And these are just my observations. It's not like I'm going and reporting to the police, they're gang stalking me. Strangers are stalking me. This is what the entity intends for the ordinary target individual to do. They did not get that from me at all. They didn't get any of that. So the entity is continuously gang stalking, thinking, calculating, anticipating that I'm going to have some meltdown, which again, this doesn't mean that the ordinary target individual is weak. This is the ordinary target individual is a human being like I am, but the ability to withstand it because I'm covered by the blood of Christ, filled with the Holy Spirit, it does not mean that I'm less of a human being, but it's speaking to what the ordinary target individual is very much subject to. And they're not weak because they're going around making assertions that are true. They just lack the evidence. So what does that mean? That's not mental illness either, because it's actually true. They're just being targeted in ways that have never been heard of and have never been proven. Entering the P.O.C. Okay, this is a Jezebel spirit though. And this Jezebel spirit immediately engaged in what is the P.O.C. criminal summoning, physically attacking me. And also I'd been subject to monitoring on the job for a prolonged period. So being forced to move out of my apartment, being the responsible person that I am, I've never been kicked out of my apartment for not paying the rent. I've never not paid my bills, but for federal group stalking and monitoring, these are damages that I continuously accumulate. But in anticipation of that, upon being gang stalked while practicing law, and also then going into property management, being gang stalked, identified as harassment, okay, by the entity. This entity is interfering with my liberty right to make money, to pay my bills, to pay my rent. And then I'm recognizing the entity is inside of my home. I'm forced to move out of my apartment. I'm forced to. And that's unlawful. That's unlawful in and of itself. And it's damages that the entity remains liable for. From 2018, I've been accumulating damages nonetheless, but documenting every step of the way, not only for the understanding of the masses, but also to prosecute a corrupt government. So the entity that's engaging in this pattern of conduct, I want to make sure that I expound upon that demonic spirit, that Jezebelic spirit, that is the pervert behind federal group stalking and monitoring, that is the psychopath, the delusional control freak behind federal group stalking and monitoring. I am speaking pretty much to the P.O.C. and throughout the content that is documented for 49 minutes and 17 seconds to 1 hour and 18 minutes and 12 seconds. And that is the chief of essentially what I'm discussing that the entity wanted to try to block out. So of course, I have to go through and make sure that you hear what the enemy doesn't want you to hear, and make sure that I document what the government tried to obstruct from being published, because it's criminal conduct and it's also exposing the demon possessed. You need to know about the wiles of the devil. You need to know about who the devil is using, and the devil is a spirit, very real. And so is Christ Jesus. He's the one that's giving you these truths that you need to know for your own protection, and also for that, in order that you would be prepared, because Christ Jesus is coming back. He is coming back. He's coming soon as well. And this is why he's revealing these things, in order that you not be caught off guard, that you not be found ignorant and unprepared at what is to come in the future. And what the demon possessed are doing, and wanted to do it secretly, wanted to do it maliciously, wanted to do it and maintain an outward demeanor of legitimacy, of constitutionality with regard to the government, and what is healthy and a normal civilized public with regard to the civilian population, gang stalking with the government. No, this is all being exposed for what it is, and it's straight out of hell. And this is something that I was subject to, and so I just wanted to expound upon that. This is essentially what was removed from the content that was captured between 49 minutes and 1 hour and 18 minutes. P.O.C. All right, content removed at 1 hour and 28 minutes and 38 seconds to 1 hour and 29 minutes and 54 seconds is again additional content that is designed to protect the reputation, protect and again, it's only the reputation, because Tracy Banks is already prosecuted. The entity itself is already prosecuted. So they're removing content that is federal stalking only for the purpose of trying to protect the reputation of a pedophile, of a sex offender, of a witch. Tracy Banks, okay? And that is, again, that's not going to happen. So not while I'm prosecuting. So at 1 hour and 28 minutes to 1 hour and 29 minutes and 54 seconds, I am speaking to what is the entity that's engaged in surveillance on the venue of the internet, specifically on YouTube. That's where I'm publishing my content. I'm also publishing my content on the P.O.C. website. And if you are not aware, it is located at thisisthepoc.wordpress.com. Okay, but on YouTube, which is a third-party facilitating venue where surveillance is underway on the internet, period. I'm only identifying the website, just like I'm identifying Woodside Senior Apartments, which is a venue in Ontario. Ontario is a venue. California, bigger picture, is the facilitating venue where the fake sun, as my documentation proves, remains over me no matter where I go, no matter what direction I travel in, no matter how long I stay there. no matter what time of day, on the internet, period. Is surveillance is underway on the internet. That's the point when I'm documenting just specifically the venue the facilitating venue on the venue of the internet where surveillance is underway. It also happens to be where I'm publishing evidence. And on this online venue, where I've already shown many iterations of that same surveillance system pursuant to monitoring which is very much personal and unique to that targeted individual, and on YouTube in the feed where they are pumping out content that is unique to you. Putting out subliminal messages to affect your mind and your subconscious, to affect you and the way you think and even how you feel about yourself, etc. It's all demonic, and Satan is using these social media platforms for that satanic purpose to affect your mind in a negative manner. You need to be aware of that. But this is what I'm getting at. And on the content, and it's again removing it to protect the reputation of this demon-possessed pedophile, this gang stalker Tracy Banks, this witch that is spiritually monitoring me and begging to have sex with me in the spiritual realm. That's what I'm getting to. And Tracy Banks is not only a witch that is gang stalking and monitoring me in relevant position, which the evidence of the P.O.C. proves. I'm also speaking to what this demon-possessed person is obsessively doing, which she doesn't want you to hear about. And it's also relevant to content that is on the venue of the internet, where I'm also subject to surveillance. Putting content in my face that is a projection of the same demons who are monitoring me. Meaning they're talking about themselves. They're talking about their weight issues. They're talking about their insecurity. They're talking about their need for what is therapy. And that's literally the case for Tracy Banks, who was a demon-possessed gang stalker, a documented one, and one that is to be convicted for this unprecedented criminal system that's underway in California in the United States. She is someone who is, again, of a Jezebel spirit. This is someone that is spiritually attacking me in the spirit while gang stalking me in relevant position. And her gang stalking conduct is what is the proof, the tangible evidence for you to be able to recognize a witch who was spiritually attacking me, not only because she's obsessed with who I am and my capabilities, the way that I think and operate, which she can never emulate. She cannot steal my talent, such as singing. She can't sing, and no witchcraft is going to enable her to steal my voice. No witchcraft is going to enable her to steal my education and my legal expertise, the way that I speak, the way that I conduct myself, the way that I behave as a woman and as a professional. She could never emulate that, and no work of witchcraft and no sex ritual, no Jezebel spirit is going to be able to take that. Father God gave me a very specific thumbprint, and it's something that the demons are not able to steal or duplicate or emulate. And their criminal efforts in doing so is evidence against them for federal group stalking and monitoring, by the way. And it's also evidence with regard to the demon-possessed who know exactly who I am and know exactly what I'm capable of with regard to my abilities and what it is that I'm able to tell you about, which is what they're doing in the spirit. And Tracy Banks, who is a demon-possessed pedophile, who is only engaged in what is grooming me as a child, sexually violating me as a child, is sexually violating me as an adult, gang stalking me, monitoring my vagina in the bathroom, monitoring, gang stalking me with the public, with a government. This is what she is extending her. I'm an adult, but I'm nonetheless the adult woman that she gave birth to, and she's engaged in sexual violence against me with every other stranger, with the government as well. And this is somebody that is also spiritually attacking me. And what Tracy Banks, as a demon-possessed person that's relying on witchcraft, she's a Jezebel spirit. She is in the spirit begging, harassing, tormenting for having sexual activity with me. And this is speaking to, again, the person, the physical person is Tracy Banks. Tracy Banks happens to be the woman that gave birth to me. So this is an incestuous person who is demon possessed. The spirit of Satan is using Tracy, who also happens to be spiritually attacking me. And that's what's so gross and what's so perverted, for anyone to be engaging in what is trying to solicit sexual activity with you while they're monitoring you in the spirit. But it's my mother, who is demon possessed, who is spiritually monitoring me. She's spiritually attacking me, and she is begging and harassing and tormenting with regard to her obsession with wanting to have sexual activity with me. This is what Tracy Banks is doing in the spirit. And this is what she didn't want to be heard on the podcast. And that's why that content was removed. And I'm going to include it and publish it again, because pedophiles, sex offenders, and the demon possessed need to be identified. And Tracy Banks, the threat that she is to herself and the public, needs to be known. This is a witch that a lot of people were listening to. A lot of people have had sex with her. And you're subject to what is being spiritually attacked in doing so. Through sexually violating me as a child, this is how Tracy Banks engaged in what is practicing witchcraft over my young mind, monitoring me as a child, spiritually attacking, in other words. And she is currently doing so as I am an adult woman, and she is being prosecuted for gang stalking with tangible evidence. And I'm also going to call the demon possessed out. She is also still practicing witchcraft, which you know because she's still gang stalking on a day-to-day basis. But she's still practicing witchcraft and spiritually attacking in a manner that is entirely defeated and futile, because she is not going to have sexual relations with me. I will never have sex with my mother. I will never have sex with Eric Spencer. I would never have sex with Tommy Allen Banks, in the same way I would never have sex with Jason Isaac Fields, who had sex with Tracy Banks. This demon is, again, my mother, who is demon possessed, and she is in the spirit day and night, harassing me and begging to have sex with me while she is obsessed with my genitalia. And this is what you need to know about this witch who is gang stalking in the physical and relevant position. And she is also monitoring me in the spirit. And this high school graduate is the same one that tried to engage in stealing my content. And as though she's not going to get away with that. And it's a criminal conduct by the entity, the government. They're going to be prosecuted for what this high school graduate that they are gang stalking me with tried to accomplish. And you being under some spell is not a constitutional defense. It is, however, your awareness that you need Christ Jesus as your Lord and Savior, so that you are not capable of being possessed by Satan in the way in which the entity would claim, oh, I did it because I was under a spell. And that's very real. However, it's not a constitutional. I am prosecuting for criminal conduct. It just so happens to be criminal conduct that's inspired by demonic conduct, demonic activity, demon possession, witchcraft, which is very, very real. It's not a defense to threaten my life, act in furtherance of kidnapping, murdering me, defaming me so that I could be permanently kidnapped, where I could be subject to ongoing psychological torture in some gang stalking facility where they would force me, that is assault and batter me, in order to poison me so that I'd be subject to that torment for the rest of my life. It is not a constitutional defense to state that you are under a spell and that's why you were gang stalking me with this Jezebel spirit, Tracy Banks, who is in the spirit on a 24-hour basis. Both while she's driving on the freeway, both while she's sitting at work, both while she's in the apartment feigning to be asleep. This demon doesn't sleep. She is engaged in 24-hour stalking and monitoring me in the spirit and gang stalking me in relevant position. And you need to know that this pedophile is obsessively consumed with trying to beg me to have sexual activity with her. This is my mother. That's incestuous. You need to understand that Satan is using my mother, and that's where you get into incestuous conduct. All right, now Tracy Banks' denial is literally irrelevant because she's gang stalking, which is the same incestuous sexual violence of federal group stalking and monitoring in the specific environment, which is inherently predatory and sexually perverted. She's spiritually attacking me, and she's engaged in what is, while monitoring me in the spirit, I'm going to repeat it again, she is engaged in what is begging me, harassing me, because I will not engage in what is sexual activity with her. This is why the Bible says not to engage in fornication, by the way. Fornication, which is a sexual activity. When you engage in sex with another person, that's an intimate bond that is designed, by the way, by God to occur within the confines of a marriage, which is only existing in the institution of marriage created by God himself between a man and a woman. That's it. The entity is engaging in what is sexually violent surveillance, gang stalking, which is exceeding my documentation, exceeding my activity on the internet and on communication devices. They are obsessed with my genitalia, and the evidence of gang stalking in bathrooms proves that. The maintenance of the specific environment in the bathroom and around the bathroom and outside the building where the bathroom is inside is the evidence of that. It's the same Jezebelic spirit. This is the demon-possessed person, Tracy Banks, who is demon-possessed with the Jezebel spirit, is obsessively monitoring me and is begging me, her daughter, in the physical, who she is spiritually attacking in the spiritual realm, and pleading and harassing and tormenting for a sexual encounter with me. That's the predator that's going to be locked up in a mental asylum, Tracy Banks. All right. She's doing so with her sex partner, Jason Isaac Fields, who's engaged in ongoing targeting, spiritually attacking me as well. These two that have had sex with each other are then obsessively consumed with both begging and pleading in the spiritual. It's very gross. It's very disgusting, and it's also very highly perverted. Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac-Field's sexual relationship is that which can exist on its own. Both of them independently obsessed with me, and both of them together, even through their sexual relationship, is based on their obsession with me. Remember, this obsession is based on no rational basis. It's based on their demon possession. Tracy Banks is supposed to be a mother and has no business engaging in what is and trying to solicit sexual activity with me in the spiritual realm, because she doesn't want anybody knowing that, first of all, she's a witch, and second of all, that she's a pedophile, and third of all, that she's engaged and interested in incestuous sexual activity with me so that she can continuously engage in spiritually attacking me. This is why the Bible speaks of things such as fornication, not to engage in it. It is sin, and it is for your protection. You open yourself up to such things when you engage in demonic behaviors, opening yourself up to things that you're not anticipating, that you're not aware of. Things that you may not even be aware of are controlling you in your lifestyle and the decisions you make in the way that you live your life. And you call it, by the way, in America, you call it freedom, when the Bible describes it as sin, as bondage. You're captive by sin. You're not free. But I'll digress from that. But nonetheless, I want to make sure that that's clear. And in addition to that, this is something that Jason Isaac-Field is also engaging in, an ongoing harassing campaign. While this state actor, Jason Isaac-Field, representing himself as some sort of government actor, as though he's conducting an investigation, interested in providing justice. I want to make sure that I include that in this documentation beforehand, because this is, while they're spiritually attacking, this is what the demon possessed are representing, and while they're still gang stalking. So this is no content that's being created by somebody that's imagining stuff. No, it's as real as federal group stalking and monitoring, and I'm exposing the demon possessed. Tracy Banks is engaged in a very heavy practicing of witchcraft. She is obsessed with me. That's why she's gang stalking me, and it's proven in the physical. She's also spiritually attacking me, and she's obsessed with me in a sexual manner. And this is why she's harassing me and monitoring me in the spirit. And this is occurring while she is soliciting sexual activity with me in one way or another. And this is entirely perverted, and it is of Satan. This is something that her sex partner, Jason Isaac-Field, is also engaging in, while this person is not legitimately engaged in any investigation. All right. The entity that's engaged in gang stalking is engaged in psychological warfare. This is the spiritual attack. This is the invisible component to federal group stalking and monitoring. The entity that's attacking your mind. And the ordinary target individual that's ignorant about the ways in which your mind can be subject to what is an attack, and you're ignorant to that, you accept curses upon yourself. This is something that is happening to the ordinary target individual, and is ignorant about it, and would even be subject to what is kidnapping for being defamed as mentally ill. When you're not mentally ill, you're being subject to an attack on your mind, which is demonic. It's demonic activity. Upon federal group stalking and monitoring, it's the P.O.C. And you're not conducting an actual investigation when the same pattern of conduct remains underway, and the so-called investigator is engaged in what is spiritually attacking me with his sex partner, Tracy Banks. Both of them. Obsessed with the notion of having sex with me, sexual activity with me. It's the same lustful Jezebel spirit. The same Jezebel spirit, by the way, just for added context, is what is behind federal group stalking and monitoring. It's demon possession. That's accomplishing what is monitoring a person, and it's happening in a demonic environment. I can't make up all angles of that. The entity kept the fake sun, the engineer light, the amplified audible activity, this ongoing pattern of police departments maintaining where that fake sun is. They're also engaged in heavy helicopter activity. I can't make that up. The demon possessed are spiritually attacking, and they're also gang stalking with the intent to criminally defame, and they lost in that endeavor. And now, with regard to that, I'm also going to call these demons out for what they're doing in the spirit, and that's what Tracy Banks. She's a witch. She's a witch, and she's been engaged in sexually obsessing over me since I was a child, in the ways in which I expounded upon. So I'm going to digress there. The entity is engaged in ongoing monitoring while I capture this podcast, and this is documentation relevant to what is obstruction of justice, while the entity is monitoring in real time while I create this podcast and add in the documentation that was intentionally removed in order to protect the reputation of who's going to be a convicted terrorist and engaged in psychological torture. You're not protecting the reputation of a gang stalker who is a sex offender. But nonetheless, this is the petty tactics that the loser, Satan, resorts to when you're already surrounded with evidence, which is speaking to an inevitable prosecution. And that gang stalker, that sex offender, just doesn't want you to hear about how she was a pedophile, grooming me and sexually violating me as a child, and how she's still doing so while she's gang stalking me. And I'm referencing Tracy Banks. Okay. This entity includes content on YouTube where surveillance is underway pertaining to therapy. And this is what is so interesting about what the demon possessed are projecting about themselves. Tracy Banks is very much what I just described as somebody that very much needs therapy. Right? The entity is talking about itself when including content in the YouTube feed pertaining to therapy, as though that's still getting to the notion of mental illness that you need therapy for. The entity is always projecting. Satan is always admitting his own issues while he is gang stalking me through the people, through the entity. Tracy Banks is actually the one that needs severe, serious, constant, prolonged therapy. That's why she is spiritually attacking her daughter, who she wants to have sexual relations with, because she's obsessed with practicing witchcraft over me and monitoring me, which is why she's gang stalking, which is evidence that anyone can witness. Speaking to the truth that I am exposing about demonic activity that's happening in the spirit and demonic activity that's happening in relevant position, where surveillance is underway, as I'm subject to it and as you are subject to it, because the specific environment surrounds you wherever you're at. Okay. It is now Wednesday, May 7th, but this is documentation that's going from May 6th, because this is when I began the documentation pursuant to May 6th. And regardless of the fact that I had to go back and include removed content because of the entity that is engaged in surveillance online, federal stalking, is engaged in an ongoing obsessive campaign to try to obstruct justice. In other words, this is P.O.C.